It's a fucked up system you're sworn to protect.
Never said it was perfect.
He wants me in exchange for them. I need you to secure the trade.
Okay. But I'm doing this by the book.
What book do you think they're going by, huh?
I took an oath, Castle. There are laws.
No official police procedure. You want to come along? Leave your badge at home.
I have to think about it.
Clock's ticking.
Hello and welcome to Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. We're your hosts, Jordan and Kumar, that's me.
And me.
This week we're talking about a movie that maybe people are still talking about, which is Punisher Warzone from 2008. As we mentioned last week, Ray Stevenson passed away, so
He did?
we decided to move straight into this one. Sometimes that's how our decisions are made for us. Let's do a pause the podcast. Do people need to watch this film?
Nope.
Or read these comics?
Oh, well, if you can read the comics, that's good. But no, there's no spoilers, nothing. Unless spoilers, people get shot.
Yes. No,
Go
in
into
fact,
this movie
I actually think you might appreciate the movie more if you've listened to some podcasts about it.
Yeah,
or
in that
read some
case-
articles about it or stuff, so...
In that case, perhaps listen to... turn this off
yeah.
and go listen to How Did This Get Made with the director, Lexi Alexander, and Patton Oswalt.
Yeah, who was a early, champion of the film.
Absolutely, right out
of the gate. I think that podcast is a little bit hard to find.
Right. Well, we're going to repeat a lot of
I can't remember where I pulled it from, but it was actually the first episode I ever listened to of that show.
Oh, really?
Because it was on some comics website, they were mentioning that you should listen to that podcast about Warzone. But also, even Patton Oswalt's blog post, I had to pull off of archive.org because it's long gone. It's
Yes, I noticed that.
But I did notice a tweet from 5 years ago where it was the 10-year anniversary, and he was still reminiscing fondly about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're gonna start with some Punisher comics.
Yes.
I guess I'd start with. Okay, so
We started with some Spider-Man comics.
we started with some Spider-Man. So
He's introduced in Spider-Man.
he showed up first initially as a Spider-Man antagonist in Amazing Spider-Man number 129 from 1974. This dude shows up. Actually, two dudes show up. Two new villains show up in this one issue. One is this weird creature called the Jackal. And we still don't know who he is by the end of the issue. And the other is this guy called the Punisher. And as soon as you open the comic, or a few pages in, you learn that there's this character going around called the Punisher. And there's newspaper headlines that say Punisher starts war against mob. And he's this dude who wears an all-black outfit with white boots and white gloves.
White boots and white gloves.
A huge white skull on his chest.
Yes.
So what we'll say, this is it's a ripoff. It's a kid's version of Don Pendleton's Mac Bolan Executioner, which is a series of novels that was started in 1969 about this dude who was in the Vietnam War. He was a soldier, and while he was in Vietnam, I think while he was there, his father ended up killing his whole family and himself because the dad was in debt to the mob, and the mob had started prostituting his sister.
Oh my goodness.
So the dad went nuts, snapped and killed the whole family. This guy comes back from the Nam. He's like, I'm going to go to war against the Mafia. And I think the first book was even called War Against the Mafia.
Wow.
Mac Bolan Executioner number 1.
I had no idea that this was the case. That
Absolutely.
He was based on a series of novels.
So Don Pendleton wrote 37 Executioner novels. And then other people, they're still coming out. They're up to 400 or 500 now of this series of... and there are all sorts of but he was basically going after Mafia guys, basically. For the most part, I've only read maybe 2 of them, I think.
Okay.
But anyway, so it was
Is
basically...
there a smoking gun? Did he get paid? Were there any court cases?
No, and... Well, it's interesting because we don't get the Punisher's origin until 2 years later. So, in '76, Marvel was also publishing a few black and white magazines, which was a kind of... There were a few companies doing this. Warren was one, Skyworld was another. And the thing about the magazines was they weren't subject to the comics code.
Okay.
And they were selling to they were skewing to a more adult audience, let's say. So these were black and white, so obviously even that turned off the kids. But that's where we got the Punisher's origin. The Punisher's origin was he was a Vietnam vet who had come back from the war and was hanging out with his wife and daughter and son in the park.
Yes.
And then they witnessed a mob execution happening, and then the mob rubbed them out for witnessing. Now, that changed a little bit over the years. Sometimes in later stories it was that they were caught in the crossfire between 2 camps.
Sure.
Because if they didn't want any witnesses, I don't know why they were executing a dude in the park. It seems like a dumb move. But anyway, so that's when we got his origin. And in that issue of that first black and white, there were 2 of them. One was in Marvel Preview number 2, included like a 10-page interview with Don Pendleton.
Wow.
Which was we're only 6 years, and he was still writing execution novels at that point. He hadn't handed it off to other people. So, I don't know. I remember also in the 80s I read an interview with one of the main writers, would have been Mike Barron or Chuck Dixon at that stage, and they were like, would you ever write a Punisher novel? And he said, no, because that would be The Executioner.
Right, I see.
But basically this was like a kid's version.
Right.
Now, I would say, because he's like wearing the tights, like he's got kind of a superhero outfit.
Yes.
And in fact, so it was written by Gerry Conway and drawn by Ross Andru, but Ross Andru initially designed him with a little skull, like a Batman bat.
Okay.
And then the art director at the time at Marvel was, I believe, John Romita Sr., and he was the one that came in and said, we're going to redesign it, make it the whole chest. Yes. And I guess he was a bit of a hit, so he started coming back in occasional Spider-Man appearances. He would be using rubber bullets whenever he teamed up with Spider-Man. Either Spider-Man would convince him to use rubber bullets, or he would be like, I don't want to hate any civilians or something. So that kind of thing. They kind of tone it down. Now, I would also say, but at this stage, Spider-Man was starting to skew a little bit older itself. So we had the death of Gwen Stacy just about 8 issues prior to this. And that was kind of a big deal. Like, that character got killed on panel permanently. It was kind of shocking for a little kid's comic. So we were skewing a bit older at this point. But basically, so the Jackal is this dude. We don't know anything about him. He wears this weird outfit. He looks more like...
He looks like a goblin.
A goblin, yeah. He looks like another Green Goblin, I guess, kind of.
Yep.
But anyway, he basically tricks the Punisher into... He says, like, Spider-Man's a bad dude, you should kill him.
Yes.
And and Punisher's like, all right, I'll go kill this guy. And then finally they kind of sort it out, I guess.
Well, there's a convoluted plot, isn't there? The Jackal decides to... he plants evidence at the scene of where he tries to kill Spider-Man. He swaps the Punisher's gun with the serial numbers filed off with one with the with an armorer's plate on it saying where the gun was bought.
Right.
And then Spider-Man shows up at the armorer, to find out who bought this gun, and the armorer is there dead.
Yeah.
And it turns out it was the Jackal's plan that the police would find the gun and then go to the police station, so go to the armorer, find the dead gunsmith, and then arrest the Punisher.
Yeah.
But they were already been going after the Punisher because he's committing extrajudicial crimes at this point. He's committing crimes at this point anyway, so it doesn't matter. But Spider-Man figures it out and he tells the Punisher that, oh, you were set up.
Yes.
And the Punisher's like, damn you, Jackal.
Yes.
Jackal's like,
yes.
I'll be back.
Yeah, he says stuff like that. There's an issue, which one of the ones we didn't read, one of my favorite bits of the first 4 or 5 appearances of Punisher and Spider-Man is something angers him, I can't remember what it was, and he screams out, blast it to Hades! Which was one of my favorite...
It's the most vanilla curse ever.
But at this time also, this was 74, and I said the 2 magazines came out in 76. Those are really key issues with the origin in it, because we didn't get the origin in Spider-Man, so the kids never knew what the background was. They didn't know about all the Vietnam stuff. But I mean, okay, so Dirty Harry and French Connection both come out in 71. Godfather is 72. I think Shaft, Clockwork Orange. Death Wish comes out in 74.
Oh, yeah, Death Wish.
The novel of First Blood came out in 72.
Okay.
So this was really, and plus there's the Executioner, so all that kind of stuff is really...
very topical.
It's all in the soup that's going into this character.
Right.
So...
There's a lot of crime-fighting vigilantes.
Yes.
Or vengeance
Violence,
seeking.
yes, gritty, urban... especially those two issues because in those two black and white issues, there's no Spider-Man or anything. It's just Punisher going after the mob. There's some weird science fiction-y stuff in the first one, which is like this mob guy's got some kind of force fields or something, which is whatever. But
so we've got drifters or kind of like social dropouts, war veterans, people with PTSD, who suffer some kind of injustice of some shape or form, and they want revenge, bloody revenge.
And we don't even get his name. We don't get the Punisher's real name. Even in those two black and whites where they say he was an ex-soldier and his family was good, they never reveal what his name was.
Right.
In those. It takes a little while before we get to that. So yeah, this is a guy who's basically machine gunning down mobsters. It's a grim, gritty, urban kind of thing. So we had a bunch of... Then he appears in a bunch of like Daredevil comics written by Frank Miller. That was an important run around 82.
Ninjas.
Yeah, I don't know if there was... It was like early Electro stuff. And, those were kind of key. Then we get he gets his own miniseries. So he was getting popular enough that he got his own miniseries. There was a crossover with Captain America in there too, which was, I think, was kind of... Some writers knew how to play those two off against each other quite well.
Sure, because they're the antithesis of one another.
Yeah, exactly. And especially if at that time they were... We'll get into all this. By the way, I recorded a 2-hour podcast about Punisher for Deconstructing Comics. So if anybody wants to...
If you want to hear all this again...
All this again, yeah. But like especially the World War II versus Vietnam kind of angle as well. Some writers were good at leaning into that.
I can imagine.
Daredevil especially was like the don't kill people guy. And he had the whole Catholic thing
he's
going
Batman,
on.
Isn't he? But with religion and blindness.
Yes, and Punisher is Batman, but he actually machine guns. Yes, exactly.
I think I was explaining Punisher to my eldest, and he said he sounds like reverse Batman.
Yes.
Because he kills, and instead of his parents dying, it's his children.
Yes, exactly, yes. Very much so. So in 86, he finally gets his first solo miniseries.
Right.
Drawn by Mike Zeck. That's a really cool series, and we will be reading that for one of the other Punisher movies when we get to
the Dolph Lundgren one, I imagine.
There's two others, yeah. So we'll definitely get to that, because it was definitely maybe a primary influence on Dolph Lundgren. It would have been one of the available source texts. Let's put it that way.
Sure.
And then 86 was really the time of Watchmen, Dark Knight. You can ring the bell for that one.
Watchmen.
Yeah.
There we go.
So you're getting kind of more violent comics.
Yes.
And we've got the direct market happening as well. So it's not out on the newsstands for the parents to be outraged about.
We talked about this last week.
So then he becomes so popular that he gets a regular ongoing series instead of just the 5 issues. And then he gets 2 more series, one called War Journal, one called War Zone. Him and Wolverine and Ghost Rider start appearing in every Marvel comic all the time. There's total oversaturation. And by the mid-90s, all those series are canceled. All 3 of his books are gone. They couldn't keep decent artists on them as well. That became a problem.
And it was getting kind of goofy as well, right?
Oh, there was a storyline in there where he was seemingly killed. I mean, we knew he wasn't killed, but other people thought he was killed. And he went undercover, and this plastic surgeon tinted his skin so he became a black dude, and he teamed up with Luke Cage for 3 issues. All sorts of crazy shit. But it wasn't as crazy as it got after cancellation, because at the point of cancellation, Marvel was really like, we don't know what to do with this character anymore. And I think a lot of the writers, especially after the first wave, like Mike Baron and Chuck Dixon, and there's another one I'm forgetting that was important at that stage, I think they really hated the character. They hated writing. They wanted to work at Marvel, but this is their assignment. And they're like, oh geez, I got to write this mass murderer, this serial killer. I hate this guy.
Yeah.
So what happened was in around 98, I want to say there was so we had this introduction of what's called the Marvel Knights line. So there was another company called Event Comics, which was run by Joe Quesada and Jimmy Palmiotti. They were artist-writers, and Marvel basically outsourced a line to them. They said, you guys hire the talent and you produce the books and we'll publish them. And it was called Marvel Knights, and there was a Daredevil written by the filmmaker Kevin Smith. There was a Black Widow series, and maybe it was a little bit before that, but so they put out this Punisher series in which this to me was the writers who hated Punisher the most. So they were like,
this is on Marvel Knights, right?
I think it was. I think it was Marvel Knights. So
is this the infamous one where he goes to heaven or whatever?
Yeah. So basically, it's revealed these angels from heaven show up, and they're like, actually, every gangster was possessed by a demon, and you've been fighting our war for us. Basically, you've been killing. And we want you to do this, and they give him these magical powers so he can magically produce like ectoplasm weapons, whatever he thinks of, and he has a sigil on his forehead that glows when the glowing guns. He's like Green Lantern; they just appear in his hands, and he like shoots up these demons and stuff. And my feeling was that, you know, as bad as the comics got towards the tail end, or even in the middle end. That the core was always the death of the family, and I always felt like that was a really tragic thing, no matter how badly it was handled. It was awful, the idea of your whole family getting gunned down in the park and him being the one survivor. And to make it a bunch of demons, I think we talked about this, I think, when we were talking about Hellblazer,
Hellblazer.
for Deconstructing Comics. I hate it when...
I still think that... we were talking about... I said that in that comic, Suspiria offers an explanation for the insanity of Brexit, which is that it's magic.
Yes.
People have acted against their interest in such a bizarre fashion because of a magic spell that makes them prideful. Prideful beyond reason.
Right.
And I liked that as an analogy, but you stepped on it and said, this is like when Frank Castle's origin story... You said, this is like when Frank Castle's origin story was revealed that his family wasn't killed by mobsters in a tragic not accident, but in a tragic
murder
human incident.
Yes.
Where the worst of humanity brought out the worst of humanity in him, arguably.
Yeah.
No. All along he's been a righteous soldier fighting against demons, and it was demons that killed his family. And I completely agree. This messes with his backstory and messes with the whole arc of his character in an unforgivable way.
Yeah.
So that comic sucks, but then a hero arrives on the scene.
So do we want to talk about why I was reading all these Punisher comics?
I think the people want to know because you've been talking a lot about Punisher.
So in around 1988, I'd just gotten into comics in '87 heavily, and I'd read a bunch of Spider-Mans, and I'd seen the Punisher in some of those backup appearances in Spider-Man comics. There was particularly a crossover event called Gang War, and he showed up in that. So I kind of knew very vaguely who this dude was, because I had a few issues of that. But then I was watching Entertainment Tonight one night, and they had an interview with Dolph Lundgren, and at the end of the interview, they said Dolph Lundgren's next project will be The Punisher, an adaptation of the Marvel Comics character The Punisher. I was like, whoa, I know that guy. I better get on board and start reading these Punisher comics. And I went out and I bought an issue, and it was drawn by Whilce Portacio. I can't remember who wrote it. I think it was around issue 14 or 15. And in the issue, there was a scene where the Punisher is on a rooftop, and he's trying to get to a building across the way. And he's got this grappling hook launcher, and he shoots the grappling hook, and it goes through the glass, through a guy's chest, and then goes into the wall behind him, and then he goes across on the rope. And I was like, whoa. And I'd read every Punisher comic after that.
Yes.
Up until about 2004. Okay, so...
Sign me up. So guys being impaled with rocket launched harpoons.
Yes. I was like, whoa.
How old were you, Kumar?
So would have been 88, so would have been 14 maybe?
Brilliant. The perfect age for that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a code-approved book at the time. It's kind of shocking looking back on it.
Explain what the Comics Code is very quickly.
So Comics Code was like this self-regulated rating system that came in the 50s, which had all sorts of rules about, like, at the time was like you can't show
people profiting from crime.
People profiting from crime.
To the Hays Code.
You can't show can't show like divorce. You can't have the word terror or horror in the title of your comic book. You can't show zombies. There's all these sorts of rules. You can't have a certain amount of blood. Well, beyond 50, this is more about shutting down EC Comics, but that's a whole other episode.
It is a whole other episode.
Anyway, so that's how I got into it, but I really stuck with it. So slightly before the Angel stuff happened, there was a one-off issue in 1995 called Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe.
Ah, yes. This is our knight in shining armor coming to the rescue.
So written by Garth Ennis, who at the time, I don't know what he had done in the UK, but he must have worked on 2000 AD, I'm guessing, because that's where they all came from, but...
I think he did work. Or at least he certainly enjoyed reading 2000 AD.
I think he was just starting out on Preacher, or was about to start Preacher. I don't know. It was drawn by Dougie Braithwaite, who was one of my all-time favorite Punisher artists, because he was really great at the martial arts, any kind of physical combat stuff. He just was an ace at that kind of stuff. And this is a comic in which it was called Alternaverse. As far as I know, there was only 2 or 3 Marvel Alternaverse comics, because they already had What If.
So it's like why. Oh, it's different to What If.
Okay. No, I don't know why. Why you've already got What If? Why are you doing Alternaverse?
They're essentially What Ifs.
They're just What Ifs, which is in DC they call them Elseworlds, but it's like a different. Nowadays it would be considered a different dimension. By the time it's just like it's an alternate story. In this story, these superheroes are fighting supervillains in Central Park. The Punisher, Frank Castle, is he's a SWAT cop or something like that, but he's just a police. He's like special. I don't know. He's got all sorts of.
It's not important, is it? I don't even remember.
It's not. But they hear a report over the radio that like there's superheroes fighting in Central Park, and he's like, my family's there.
Yeah.
And he gets there, and his family's dead.
Yeah. They've been killed in
the crossfire by these superheroes.
Between superheroes and supervillains.
Yes.
And he's, of course, horrified. Like.
And Cyclops of the X-Men says sorry.
Yeah, sorry, didn't mean it.
Yeah, and Punisher loses it on the spot, kills Cyclops.
He kills a whole bunch of the X-Men.
Kills a whole bunch of them.
I think he kills Captain America.
Maybe.
I don't remember, but he kills a whole bunch of people. Yeah. No, he doesn't kill Captain America because I think Captain America restrains Wolverine, or maybe it's
well, he had his shield.
You're right. I don't think it's not important. The fact is, he just yanks out, like he snaps.
Yeah.
He yanks out his pistol.
Yeah.
And shoots a bunch of X-Men on the spot. And Wolverine, I think goes berserk, slashes
his face. Yeah. Scars his face.
And
then he goes to jail.
Yes, he goes to jail. Or does he go to jail? Because he's on the way to jail.
Yeah, sorry, he's arrested. He's arrested.
Yeah.
And they're about to take him to prison, and then he's broken out by this enclave.
Yeah.
Is that the right word?
Yeah.
These people who are all sorts of people that have all sorts of different mutilations and stuff, and
they are all people who have suffered as a consequence, not of supervillainy, but of the conflict between superheroes and supervillains. Yeah. They are all collateral damage.
Yeah.
And they are rich.
Yeah.
And they want revenge.
Yeah.
They tell him that you are going to punish the super heroes and the super villains.
Yeah.
We're going to give you whatever you need.
Yeah.
Any equipment you need.
Yes.
And you're going to go and you're going to kill them all.
Yeah.
And Frank Castle's like, yeah.
Right.
He's into it.
He's into it.
Well, he's dour. He's not enthusiastic.
No, he's not enthusiastic.
This is an important characteristic of Ennis's Punisher, I think. He doesn't emote.
He feels different levels of rage, and we'll talk about that a bit later.
He does feel rage, but he never feels happy, or he's never happy or excited. He's got the low affect of a sociopath.
Yeah.
and he's utterly traumatized.
Yeah.
So the Punisher is now pit again. Like he takes out Spider-Man and Venom fighting in a sewer.
Yeah.
He zaps them with, I think, tasers, perhaps?
Yeah, it seems like that, like a whole bunch of them.
He's strung up some wires, and they get electrocuted.
Yeah.
And when they're electrocuted, he then shoots them. Bam, they're dead.
Yeah.
And he just keeps going. He goes from superhero to superhero, killing them. He beats Doctor Doom to death with a sledgehammer.
Yeah, well, he knows he's there's like some of these villains and heroes he can't deal with. He's like, well, how do I deal with this? And he's like, maybe. So he decides he's going to get Doctor Doom. And the reason we learn afterwards is that he suspected that Doom had a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. So he wants to steal that bomb, which he does. He steals the bomb, and then he lures
this is fantastic.
The X-Men and the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants to the moon. They each think they've called each other there.
And they're lined up, you know, like in a classic superhero battle.
Yeah.
You have the forces of evil arrayed on one side and the forces of good arrayed on the other.
Yeah.
They're pontificating, they're making their speeches. Ha! You thought that you could fight me here on the moon? And the other one says, no, you thought that we would fight you here on the moon.
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you didn't do this, who did? And then bang.
Yeah.
Like, how did Frank Castle get to the moon?
How did he get the nuclear bomb
How did he get a nuclear bomb up to the moon? It doesn't matter, because I think part of what Ennis is doing here, he's unpacking some superhero tropes, but leaning into other ones, playing them straight, right? So, first of all, we've got the idea that the heroes are causing collateral damage. Something that never pops up in a normal book, right? Yeah. But Ennis is saying, these guys fighting a lot, some of their powers are pretty destructive.
Yes.
People are probably going to get injured sometimes. What if Frank Castle's family was one of the people who got injured?
Yes.
Great. I mean, it's been done a few times. I think he's done it again with The Boys. That's
right.
Where,
yes.
But this is
so we have to.
But this is long ago. This is in the 90s.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, the Punisher himself is a superhero in this comic because he does things that a regular person couldn't do. Only a superhero could take out these other superheroes.
Yeah.
It's his superhuman...
I actually... Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's his superhuman determination.
Yes.
But also, I mean, he's surrounded by the comic magic, you say? He has the invincibility of a comic book character.
Yeah.
And the superlative power of a comic book character in his own book. Yeah. And he's applying it against all of these people. And they're all dying. So normally where he would be gunning down mobsters now, he's gunning down these superheroes.
And he's got to find ways to beat them. Like, he's got to get a nuclear bomb. How am I going to beat these guys? Because at points he's starting to hit walls in the story. He's like, well, how am I going to beat these guys? And he figures, okay, I'll go out and get Dr. Doom, then I'll get a nuke, because I think he probably has one since he has his own country.
Yes.
And
this Dr. Doom's famous for having robot decoys.
Yeah.
So he has some kind of gadget.
Yeah.
He sticks it on Doom's robot and suit of armor.
Yeah.
And it creates a feedback loop that shorts out every Doom robot in the whole of Latveria or wherever it is he's from.
Yes. Latveria is right.
Latveria.
Or Latvia? Which one's
Latvia is a real place.
Okay, so it's Latveria.
Yeah. And then Doom is left incapacitated.
Yeah.
Still inside his armor.
Oh, amazing kill scene, because you get an outside shot of the tower of his castle, and you just hear the clank. He's got a sledgehammer. Punisher's got a sledgehammer. He's trying to get past the armor.
Yeah.
And you just hear a clank, 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 squish. It's just a sound effect.
We only see the sound.
Yeah.
The sound effects in that panel. We don't actually see the... Yeah, it's good. It's clever. I like it. It's a bit mean-spirited.
Yes, well, so Garth Ennis is a guy who writes war comics and anti-superhero comics.
Yeah,
he really hates superheroes.
He's famous
because as a kid growing up, he was like, I read war comics. I didn't read these stupid American superhero comics, so...
Yes, he's famous for thinking superheroes are stupid.
He really... though sometimes he's warm-hearted towards them a little bit, but this was like the first chance somebody gave him to be like, yeah, you can kill all these superheroes.
Yeah, and I thought this was pretty clever.
Oh yeah,
I can see that it would have really blown a few people's minds.
Blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading... This was like the nadir of Punisher comics. Like, they were dead. All the titles were getting canceled. And it was like, when am I going to get some good ones? I was reading them all every month anyway, like an addict. And then suddenly this one came along that was so great. Really awesome. As I said, the martial arts kind of stuff, the physical combat stuff is drawn so great. But there's stuff like that thing about like, how did he get the bomb up there? What's this device? There's another thing, like he waits until Hulk turns into Bruce Banner, he tracks him, and then he kills him, but
we know that
in other
Bruce
comics that wouldn't work.
He wakes up as soon as he's killed.
Yeah.
As soon as he's shot.
But all this stuff's almost secondary, because there's a whole thing layered in here where his lawyer is actually Matt Murdock, who's Daredevil, and they knew each other as kids.
Yes.
And there's all this story stuff about bullying when he was a kid, and all this stuff's in there, and Matt Murdock is keeps trying to talk him down, and there's some really great bits in here.
Because he's arrested again. He's caught during his rampage, and the Cabal Enclave busts him out again. Just set him, because they're rich, they bust him out again and put him right back on. And Matt Murdock's like, can you stop? Every time they arrest him, Matt Murdock's like, you got to stop, man. And he says, the system can't even hold me. And he says, I'm a mass murderer, and I'm not going to stop. And that was a real, nobody else, even in this weird little book, nobody else, other Punisher writer had approached him with that mindset that he can't stop. He's a compulsion. And he's an acknowledged bad
Yes, and the way this book ends is great because Daredevil's like the last one.
Yes, he doesn't know he's where we don't. So Daredevil and Punisher confront one another at the end of the book. Daredevil is the final superhero.
Yeah,
we don't get a scene where Frank is forced to choose between his friendship with Matt Murdock and his slaughter of the final superhero that ruined his life. Instead, he kills Daredevil first, and with Matt Murdock's last breath, he pulls off his mask and shows him that he was his lawyer and friend all along. At which point, he kills himself.
Yeah,
Punisher which he'd always planned to do.
I think so too.
It's certainly not because he found out he killed his friend.
I agree. I think if he knew Matt Murdock was Daredevil, it wouldn't have stopped him. I think the way Ennis writes Punisher,
I agree.
He would not be able to stop himself from killing him.
I agree.
That would not be a factor.
Yes, I agree. It happens again and again, especially in Max, which we'll get to. Yeah. But yes, so I think he'd always planned to kill himself, because there's a scene earlier with his sponsors where he tells them, Daredevil's the last one, I'm going to go kill him, then this is going to be finished.
Yeah. And they're like, but there'll be more heroes. They come up all the time. He's like,
you're going to be our guy forever.
Yeah.
And Punisher's like, nope. Does he shoot them?
Yeah. he kills them all.
So he kills them. He kills them all.
Yeah.
Because, and then he goes to fight Daredevil and shoots himself, because he himself is a super.
Yes.
He's one of them, right?
Yes, and I think that's a really key point for me for the Ennis version of the character is I feel like Ennis's approach was a bunch of hypotheticals. What if you had a guy that was almost unkillable? And what if this guy really wanted to kill bad people? And what if this guy was super resourceful, so resourceful he was rarely caught? And what if you put these three things together, then this is the
I think the final component, I agree with all three of those points. I think the final component, which I think has always been present throughout the character, even from the very start, is that he has a code.
Yes.
Right. But he has a code.
Yeah.
Right, but what is the code? Okay. Well, does the code make him a hero, an anti-hero, a villain, or something else entirely?
Yeah, the code is kind of like he doesn't kill cops. It's like an example of one of the things.
Well, when I say code, I mean he has a moral sense, but what is it? So when he's introduced, it's bizarre. He wants to kill Spider-Man.
Yeah.
In this if we can wind back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where are we at?
Absolutely, we're only 30 minutes.
Wind back.
Yeah.
When he's introduced, he wants to kill Spider-Man, but when Spider-Man is incapacitated and is about to walk off a building, he wants to save him.
Yeah.
And the Jackal's like, what are you doing?
Oh, yeah, this is bizarre. This is really bizarre. You're right, yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
This is, you want this guy to die. And he's like, not like this.
Yeah.
Not walking off a building.
Yeah.
He has to be killed by me.
Yes.
But but the way he says it is he doesn't want. It's not so much that he wants to kill him with his own hands. It's more that there's a right way to
kill he has to be shot in the head or something because he's a bad guy. Something like that.
There's a right way to.
You can't just let him fall off a building and die. He can't just be dead.
Yeah.
So,
but it's almost it's portrayed. I think it's more that it would be the wrong way. Like it would be a wrong act to let him fall to his death, but to kill him with a gun would be a righteous act.
Okay.
I think
there's 2 points about this code we need to come back to once we talk a little bit about the beginning of the Marvel Knights line.
Okay.
So,
but return to Ennis's take on the character, as you said. Invulnerable, virtually. Resourceful.
Yeah.
Vengeance-fueled.
Yes.
And has a peculiar moral code.
Yes. So we're going to come back to this code big time. So after this horrible Angel stuff, they did 8 issues of it and was like, okay, that's not working either. They hired Garth Ennis, and at the point they hired him, when they announced his name, this was around 97, I'm going to say, it was like, oh, it's that Preacher guy. Now, I'd read a bit of Preacher, so I was like, oh my god, they're finally going to do the right Punisher comic. So I met Jimmy Palmiotti at a convention in Toronto in 97. I said, what's going to happen with this Garth Ennis Punisher comic? And he's like, don't worry, you're going to love it. I said, is it going to be code approved? And he's like, and he suddenly went very serious. He said, all Marvel books are code approved. And I was like, wait a second, Punisher, Preacher, that's the one where they guys like fuck chickens and stuff? I was like, okay,
they sure do.
Weird. 99, I went to San Diego Comic-Con and I met Garth Ennis. And I said, what are you going to do in your Punisher comic? He says, don't worry, I got a flamethrower, I got a polar bear, I got throwing people off the Empire State Building, you're going to love it. I was like, wow, okay, this is going to be great. And his approach, when it finally came out around 2000, I want to say, was to make it a comedy. Which nobody else had ever thought, let's make this it's funny, weird, with these funny, eccentric side characters.
We didn't read this book for the...
We didn't read it for this. We will read it for the...
So we can't talk too much about it.
We can't talk too much, but it was just a funny... The whole take was that it was like... The kills were over the top and weird. Like, he punches a polar bear in the face and then runs away so that the polar bear will maul the gangsters that are after him because he's running out of bullets or something at that stage. And stuff like... All just sorts of crazy stuff is happening.
He kicks Spider-Man in the balls or something early on.
I don't think he kicks him in the balls, but there's a great scene where he gets in a fight with Spider-Man and he uses Spider-Man basically as a punching bag
that's right.
to defend himself against his villain.
Who is super strength.
And then at the end of it, Spider-Man wakes up in a daze and he's like, what happened? And Punisher says, we had a team up, you were great.
That's right.
This was one of my favorite lines. So this was a really funny series.
He uses Spider-Man as a human shield.
Yeah, so he did 12 issues of it, and his initial plan was to do 6 issues on, 6 issues off. But Garth Ennis found he was liking it. So then he did a second series, which ran 36 issues, but there was a very important thing that happened at the end of the first issue, whereas he goes into this alley, and he sees this woman being attacked by 2 guys. And he kills the 2 guys. And then he walks away. Yeah. He starts walking away. And the woman's like,
thank you for saving me.
Thank you, you saved me. You saved me. He says, what?
You didn't.
And she says, you saved my life. And he says, I guess I did.
Oh, is that what he said?
I guess I did. And he walks away. And that was Garth Ennis, I think he talked about it in an interview, that was a real turning point for him in his understanding of the character.
Yeah.
It's not really, he doesn't care so much about saving the people, but killing the people that make other people miserable or ruin the lives of their people, if you know what I mean.
Well, who ruined his... Well, it depends. I think, yes, this is what I meant by him saying that he has a code, but the code is not necessarily a code that makes him look good. He just wants to murder mobsters.
Well, okay, yes. And something else that very important happened at the end of issue 12 of that first run, which was there were these copycat killers that were showing up. One was called the Elite, this guy that wore a white suit and a white mask, and this hot dog vendor comes into his neighborhood, and he kills him because he was lowering the tone. And there are these other 2 guys, I can't remember what their shtick was, but they were these vigilantes that were killing people, and they've been trying to recruit the Punisher as their leader. They're trying to contact him. Finally, he shows up, and he says, they're like, we want you to be our leader. You're just like us. And he says one word. He says, no. And then he open fires on them and kills them.
Yep.
And that was another hint that, okay, there's some kind of code here where...
Well, he just slaughters anyone that commits crimes except himself.
Yeah, so, well... there's a question about sanity here. Because, I mean, it's presented in a way that we know that these 3 copycats are going about it the wrong way.
Right. We should stop talking about... Okay, yeah, well, I'm not sure. But we didn't read this comic for this
No,
week.
we didn't. That's right, okay.
Why don't we... It's all right. We'll definitely come back to this when we do...
2004.
Thomas Jane's Punisher from 2004. But I think this definitely applies for Punisher Max, which is, I think, the final book we read for this.
Yes.
So when did that come out?
I think around 2004. So 2003, Garth Ennis, after that moment, he'd started getting serious about the Punisher. And Marvel introduced this line called Max, which was their adults line. So you could have swearing, sex, graphic violence, all that stuff. And he did a series called Born, which was 4 issues of the Punisher set in Vietnam. Now, there was very little talk about Vietnam. The further you get away from the 70s, people were mentioning it less and less in regards to the Punisher because of the age issue. And Garth Ennis actually leaned into it. So he actually did the story set in Vietnam, which suggested strongly that a lot of the Punisher elements were there were established because of the nature of that conflict.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Okay.
The simplest way. Great. I totally love that series. But then he started doing this regular Max line.
Yes. Now this one is not funny.
No. Well, there's very blackest of black humor
comedy.
in there.
Yeah.
But it's this was really, these comics were upsetting. Really, and it's not even the violence. It's the world that these people live in, where they prey on each other and prey on innocent people. The bad guys are preying on innocent people, and they're just in this endless cycle. I think it's a 60-issue run with a few side projects. But early on in the run, Punisher gets sent on a mission to Russia by Nick Fury, and it's all very hush-hush, undercover kind of stuff. It's to retrieve this virus or something like that, which is actually in the body of this little girl. There's a whole thing there. But that comes back again and again. It's like, they're like, the Punisher knows we did this mission in Russia that we weren't supposed to get, so the generals are like, well, we gotta off him. And it just keeps coming back over and over again over the 60 issues in some form or other. So there's all sorts of... The thing I find about this series is there's consequences to the violence, in the sense that you kill somebody, they come after you. There's a whole series in it called Widowmaker about all the widows of the gangsters that he's killed. They come after him. Cool. It's just endless.
Okay.
But it is really the grimmest. It opens with a recap of the death of his family. And I would say that, as brutal as it is, the balance for me in it is that actually, I think Garth Ennis' writing is really lyrical in it. I think there's a poetic tone to it. When he really wants to dial in on it, he does it. And when he describes the death of the family, it's so shocking. It's very economical, the language of it. But he describes himself as going out and making the world sane. That's how he describes what he does.
He's a crazy person.
Yeah. We have to talk about the mental health of the Punisher is a real thing that comes up, as I was kind of getting to when talking about the copycats. Like, well, who's sane here? And he describes it as...
Well, he's a crazy person in Punisher Max. He's, as you said, it's very great. He's an enormous, granite-faced...
Pushing 60.
Yes. Oh, he's old. Yep.
Which nobody's ever done. Everybody else drew him at like 30.
Yep.
Throughout.
Yes, and an enormous stone-faced monster.
Yep.
Who, as you say, just goes around murdering people, and he also, it's not just like, Spider-Man, if you look at the continuity, it's like, okay, he's been Spider-Man for 5-10 years. They very clearly state the family was killed in 76, which is when those two black and white issues came out. And he's been doing this for 28, 29 years. And they multiple times they say he's probably killed a dozen people a week. So they run the numbers. It's like he's probably killed 2,000 people. That number comes up again and again. He's probably killed 2,000 people. Sure. So there's a story here in this book. One of his old friends has turned coat.
Microchip.
Microchip.
Who was his tech guy, his hacker guy that he used to work with.
Yes.
And he shows up in Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe as well. He's kind of the one sidekick of the Punisher.
Okay. And he's, as I said, he's turned his coat. He's working for, we assume, the government?
Yes.
I think it's the CIA.
Yes, it is the CIA.
And he wants to, with the assistance of the CIA, or the CIA with the assistance of Microchip, want to bring him in. We don't know why at first. There's also a conflict going on with mobsters.
Yep.
They also want to kill...
yes, because he goes after this guy, Cesare, this old 100-year-old mob
100-year-old man. He attacks his 100th birthday.
Yeah.
He shoots him in the face and then walks out.
Yeah.
They all pile out into the courtyard.
He waits for them to pile out. That was his plan, to get them to pile out.
They all pile out in the courtyard, and then he opens up with a machine gun and just mows them all down. Some of them try to flank him. They get blown up by claymores.
Yeah.
Garth Ennis likes his claymores. Face this way before towards enemy. You see it again and again. So now, and the mob's after him too. So these two forces are converging on Frank. There's all kinds of guts and mayhem. The mob guys are colourful in and of their own right. There's a guy called Pitsy who's about 5 foot tall.
So there's
it's kind of like a crazy short guy.
Yeah, so there's Nikki Cavella is like the main gangster. He's been ostracized because he's too crazy for the mob. They send him to Chicago, but he's brought back by...
I think because everyone's dead, right?
Yes. No, but it was a government guy that tried to get him to come back, or so, I don't remember. But he's got these two lackeys, Pitsy and Ink, who are just crazy. So Garth Ennis tends to go for... I don't know how he developed these characters that are really singular, I guess. Like, they're relentless. They're something like... They're just completely crazy. Like, there's no...
They'll have a single... As you say, singular is a good word. They'll have a certain quality, and he'll rank... That'll be the whole of their personality.
Yes.
Some goofy tell. And it'll be cranked up to 11.
Yeah.
So Ink, he's wall-eyed. He killed a guy with a biro. So that's why he's called Ink.
Yeah.
Pitsy's tiny and angry.
Yeah.
And they're dangerous.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit... They catch Frank.
Yeah.
Micro gets Frank, ties him up, tells him he wants him to join him. He says, this is it. You're running out of time. You're doing this 30 years.
Yeah. He's got him in a room. He says, you've... At the time, reading this was so shocking, because he's like, you would be a grandfather by now. Your son would be 28. You'd probably have grandkids. You've killed everyone that murdered your family. You've killed the people that ordered the hit.
Yeah.
You killed people that ordered them.
You've killed their friends.
Yes.
You've killed their cousins.
Yeah.
They're all dead. But you're still going.
Yeah.
It's like, you can't do this forever. Why don't you come in? We need you on this deal, or we want you for this mission, or we want you to come on board with this plan.
Yeah, they want them to work. It's revealed they want him working for them regular, on all their missions or whatever. The stuff they can't have on the books. They want
him for Black Ops.
Yeah.
And it's going to be paid with heroin money or something. Because
he figures that out. Punisher's like, well, how does this guy get funded, the CIA guy? And he's like, and then they get interrupted before he can answer.
Yeah.
But Microchip knows it's heroin money.
Yeah. Yeah, and Frank's not about that.
Yeah.
Because that's a crime. And he hates crime.
Yeah.
So, yes, but... there's a big violent denouement. Everybody dies. Microchip teams up with Frank to defend him from the mobsters as they converge on his location.
Yeah.
Frank tells him that he should run away. At some point earlier, Frank has told him a story. It's a story about, I think, shortly after his family had died, but before he'd become the Punisher. His friend, his neighbour, came in and they're having a beer together. And the neighbour says, oh, I've got some news. I've left my wife. I've met someone else. And Frank just stares at him and says, okay, I need you to leave now.
Yeah.
And the guy's like,
Run.
what?
Run.
And he says, run. Run, please.
Yeah.
And then he throws him out the window and beats him to death.
Yeah.
Because adultery is a crime.
I don't know if it's a crime, but it's...
Well, it's not.
No, I mean, I don't think the problem was that he saw him as a criminal. I think he saw him as somebody... At that point, his family's just been killed. His wife's been killed.
Yes.
So I think he's seeing it from that side of it, more that this guy just left his wife for a whim.
Possibly. Yes, that's one way of looking at it. But I like the idea that
it was a crime.
That Frank is now transformed.
Yeah.
And even a friend who lives next door to him, he can now learn... He doesn't see him as a person anymore. Now he's just another mobster, another criminal. Yeah. And the extent of his mercy for his own neighbour is to give him a chance to run before he chases him down. And I think that because it happens again at the end of the book. Once all the mobsters are killed in hilarious, gruesome ways, Pitsy lands on an iron fence and it goes right through him.
Yes, and then the Punisher jumps out
the window and jumps onto his head. A scene which is repeated in the film that we watched.
Yeah.
And then Micro's been shot in the guts. He might be dying, or he could possibly live if he gets help. We know that he dies, though.
Yeah.
Because there's Ennis has put little... what were they called again? The lines... Not in a box, not a word balloon.
A caption?
A caption.
Yeah.
Ennis has put a caption telling us how each of the people involved in the final firefight died. And we know that Micro died from a bullet to the cranium.
Right.
Yet here he's lying there with a gut wound in his guts. Yeah. And Frank walks up to him and he says, it's being paid for with heroin, isn't it? And Micro's like, yeah. and he says, I gave you a chance to run before the showdown. Yeah. So that Micro probably saved Punisher's life in this firefight.
Yeah.
Because the Punisher told him he could run, much like he told his friend the Adulterer. And he didn't run. He stuck it out to defend the Punisher. He gets shot in the guts. The Punisher, they're the last two alive. Punisher walks up to him and says, I gave you a chance to run. And he just blows him away.
Yeah.
Such is the extent of the Punisher's loyalty to a man who saved his life. But it doesn't matter. Because because he got in his way. Because he committed a crime. He wanted him to... He teamed up with the poisoners, with the villains, the guys that are selling drugs. That's it. Doesn't matter that he saved his life. This is his code, and it's not even... You couldn't even call it a black and white code. It's almost blue and orange. Because it seems so alien.
Yes, that's exactly it. That's what I love about this Garth Ennis Max
I very much liked it.
Is this guy is like, what is this being? Like this monster, this weird creature.
Yes.
That just thinks in a way that I can't imagine. I can't understand how he thinks that way.
Yes. Yes, I liked it.
There was, and I really loved being. I love being. Like, I like horror movies. I like being frightened by that world that these people are living in. And there's kind of a sequel a few volumes later called Up is Down and Black is White, where the CIA agents come back and stuff. And again, it's the consequences. Nikki Cavella comes back and he digs up Frank's family and literally pisses on their corpse and films it and puts it on TV.
Yeah.
And now the Punisher, he actually feels a level of rage that he doesn't normally feel. He feels more rage... So that he's like...
Hyper rage.
He's like driving in to fight them, and he's like, I know I should be planning, but I can't. Like, my rage is... I'm too angry. I can't stop and plan. I just need... I know I should stop.
Thought.
There's another one where he's... There's a later one where he's dealing with these people who are human traffickers. And he's so angry, he's like, he's got to wait for these people to come out, and he's like, no, he can't stop himself. He just has to jump out and start shooting them. And he says in the captions, like, I just can't control myself. I have to kill these people now. I should be waiting 5 more minutes. I can't do it.
Right.
But one sequence I want to talk about in there's lots of in Max. So in Up is Down and Black and White, because it goes back to the sanity issue, which is should I read this whole? I wrote down this monologue by the Punisher.
This isn't one of the comics we read, but
yeah.
Yep, make a note of the time in case you decide to cut it.
This might be the last bit. He says, there's a dream I have from time to time, and in the dream, I don't stop. I kill the soldiers and hitmen, the extortionists and racketeers, the dark old fucks who send them out to fight. I hold the trigger down until they're all gone, but I don't stop. The innocents are watching, just like always. The slack-jawed thousands gazing at the beast. My family lie red and shredded in the grass. I face the crowd and bring the weapon to my shoulder. If my world ends, I tell them, so does yours. The recoil starts and I wake up. It's just a dream, I tell myself. It's just a dream. It's just a dream. And then, in the next issue, we see the dream, and it's him sitting on a tank in the middle of Manhattan, and every human being is dead. Every one of them. And then his family appears in the dream and says, Frank, we're still dead.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Bit more of that, a bit less pissing on corpses, thanks, Mr. Ennis.
Well, they had to piss on the corpses to get there, I think, to get to that level, because that's when he really loses. He's really close to losing it in that one. I think that's where the question of what is the code, because he's very borderline in that series. He's very close to, like, I wish I could kill everyone, including the innocents. It's almost like, it's actually like the Incredible Hulk, where he just wants peace and quiet. He just wants no people around. He just wants everything to just shut up. Everybody shut up. And the Punisher's like,
shut up, crime.
Yeah, it's beyond crime. It's the innocent. He's thinking about killing innocents here, which nobody leaned into the Punisher like this.
Are there any innocents? Yeah, no. All right, okay. Let's talk about the Punisher Warzone.
So,
film. What a film.
Yeah, what a film. So 2008 this came out. Now, there was a Punisher movie, as I said, in 89 with Dolph Lundgren.
Yes.
And there was one in 2004 starring Thomas Jane, which was after Garth Ennis had started his Marvel Knights run, and was just at the beginning of the Bourne stuff. So
this is after Welcome Back, Frank.
Yes, which was the Marvel Knights, the comedy. Let's call it the comedy version.
Yeah.
So 2008, we're 4 years into the Marvel Max version. Let's call it the adult version.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so but both of them came out from Lionsgate Pictures.
So they have the rights?
They had the rights, and I don't know why they would make 2 Punisher movies in a row, knowing that one failed. It just seems like crazy town to me, but I guess the book was selling very well at the time. I'm not really sure.
Well, they have a property, because this film was originally conceived as a sequel to 2004.
Yes, and in fact it kind of is. Like, there's nothing in it that necessarily says
that it's not?
It's not a sequel. I don't know, but I haven't seen the 2004 one.
But,
actually,
the guy that was in 2004, Thomas J., he was attached to this film, Warzone, for a little while.
Okay.
Just when it was scuttlebutt. Because I think it's soon after the film came out, even though it wasn't a success, they're still thinking of doing a sequel for it, whatever. Right. They got the rights, they want to make another one, whatever. They think the moment's right.
Okay.
So, time chugs on, the film's having trouble getting made, different people are attached to it, and don't want anything to do with it. There's a couple of scripts, one by the Sons of Anarchy guy, Ken Sutter. And then eventually Lexi Alexander is attached because she's cheap. She's a director at the beginning of her career.
Oscar nominated.
She's been nominated for an Oscar for a short film she did.
Yeah.
She's a karate champion.
Yes, and she was she's a world kickboxing champ, and her green card was sponsored by Chuck Norris. He's the one that told her to come to the U.S. and be a stuntwoman, and she worked as a stuntwoman on Joel Schumacher's Batman and Robin.
Well, we won't hold that against her. But she directed a film called Green Street Hooligans, which I've never seen, but my 2 younger brothers are big fans of it.
Okay.
And yeah, as I said, I think she's a karate champion, not kickboxing, because Chuck Norris is a karate guy as well.
Right.
And the Frank Castle in this film is a veteran. I don't think it says a veteran of what, but they mentioned that he's
just a trainer, like a special.
They mentioned that he trained Marines in close combat, and if Wikipedia is correct, Lexi Alexander herself trained Marines.
Okay, interesting.
So a little Easter egg, I suppose, there in the film. Right. Okay. So should we jump right into how this film starts?
Okay. Well, so I just want to say before we get to it, so. She was sent a box of comics by Marvel. According to her, the notes she got from Marvel were better than the notes she got from Lionsgate. But Lionsgate was financing the movie, so they had.
Well, there was some trouble on the set. She didn't have the rights of the final cut.
Okay.
In the end, there was some conflict.
Yeah, they replaced her music and stuff, and
there was executive.
So they apparently sent her a box of comics. According to her, they were misprinted with only 3 colors.
I heard that too, but I couldn't find the reference for it.
Well, she said it in an interview that they had sent, that she talked to someone at Marvel. She's like, "Why do they look like this?" She's like, I guess it was a photocopier.
Cheap prints,
cheap printing.
Apparently.
But if you look at the Max line, the way they're colored, they look like they're colored. They're colored very grimly. They're very gritty, and they have very few colors. My guess is she just read the actual comics as they are printed, because that's the way that they were colored in the first place. But
the reason you bring this up is because the film is lit in
It's trying to do it at Tracy.
It's like
it really is trying to do it. Yeah. They're like, let's make this look like the comic books, which she claims later was
intentional
misprinted comics.
Well, yes, I couldn't. I remember reading that somewhere when I was doing my research, and I thought I've got to find the reference for this because she didn't mention it in that interview that we listened to. Right. The "How Did This Get Made" interview, and I feel like it should have been mentioned in that.
Yeah.
And then I couldn't find where I read it.
Okay.
So citation needed, but you say you read it.
I got the interview here somewhere.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, then it's so that she received. I don't know if it was the old Spider-Man ones with, because they sent her a stack, right?
Yes.
But she definitely read the Max stuff because there's there's stuff.
Absolutely. And she
there are scenes all through this.
She says, like in her interviews, she justifies the scenes by saying they were in the comics.
Yes.
For example, like or her. See, my thing is, I read the Max comics and I'm horrified, and I like being horrified by them. And they're supposed to be horrific I think, But she's read them and she's like, oh, there's a scene in the first volume where these gangsters make they cut off a guy's balls and put them in a cup. They say they're going to do it and then they do it.
Yeah.
And he's walking around with his balls in a cup.
Yeah.
And she's like, this is ridiculous.
Ridiculous,
like,
yeah.
Okay,
yeah,
this is going to, so we're going to make the movie ridiculous. Because her reading of Marvel Max was that it's ridiculous and it was not my reading of it. Right. And it's just kind of, to me, there's kind of mix up with Marvel
in the
Max
cup scene, yeah, that is a ridiculous scene. Because it's not the Punisher that does that to him. It's those goofy, over the top monster characters.
Pitsy, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're very Garth Ennis.
Yes.
People who are who have her physiognomy is a bit ridiculous. Wall eyes, runts, crazy yelly, one tone, one note characters. Says he's going to cut off a guy's balls and does, and then the guy's wandering around with his balls in a cup.
They're kind of, but if they're slightly more important characters, he actually leans into them a bit more. Like if you get background, like in the second when Nikki Cavella comes back and he pisses on the Greys or whatever, like okay, whatever. But then we get the whole backstory of his father and his aunt, and you're like, oh my god, this guy's background.
I didn't get to that. Well, yeah, we're talking about his henchmen though.
Yes, no, of course, dudes. Yes, yeah.
Anyway, the film. So it's
she goes and then she goes into online forums. She goes on a Punisher forums and she's like, what do you want from this Punisher movie?
Yes. She interacted with the fandom, yeah.
Yes.
She said, so she's a bit jaded about the experience because this film was not a success.
Sure.
But she had very positive things to say about her experience with the fans and her experience with Marvel itself.
Yes.
She said she got great notes from Marvel. They liked her. She liked them. She enjoyed interacting with the fandom, just how thrilled they were to be consulted on the film, how excited how much they loved the Punisher, and how much they wanted there to be a Punisher film. Her negative experiences, I think, were with Lionsgate.
Right.
Yeah. Who had the final say because they were stumping up the money, and also they screwed her in promoting the film. They didn't promote the film right. They decided they had a dud. Understandable. It's a bit uneven. And they pushed the release back to Christmas 2008.
As an alternative to awards movies, which would have been out.
Yeah, which is the time for awards films. It should have been... What did Patton Oswalt say? It should have come out at the end of summer.
Yes.
When you got your kids' movies out the way and you want to see something mad before the holidays end or whatever. Instead, it came out at when films like
Slumdog Millionaire.
Slumdog Millionaire was one of its competitors. Yeah. They didn't promote it properly. This film, I might as well mention it now. This film did not do well. It is the lowest grossing Marvel movie.
Right, lower than Thomas Jane?
Yes, much lower.
Right, okay.
Much lower than Thomas Jane. Lower than Howard the Duck.
Okay, that I can believe.
Lower than Elektra.
Whoa, that's shocking. Yeah. Okay.
This film made $10 million.
Yeah.
Against a $35 million budget.
Yes.
Certified bomb.
But the
only things that have done... I went online and checked Box Office Mojo. The only films that have done less are ones that were released in a couple of cinemas.
Man-Thing.
I think Man-Thing, yeah, but it didn't have a proper... Man-Thing was on the list, but it doesn't have a proper release. Okay. Man-Thing. An episode of the Inhumans that was shown at IMAX.
Okay.
Obviously that grossed less because they were just showing the Inhumans at IMAX.
Yeah. I will say the thing about it though is, male directors get 3 strikes and female directors get 1 strike. You're out. And that was kind of her 1 strike, and she's
been mostly doing television since then.
She's done episodes of Arrow and Supergirl, which is her other comics connection, I guess. But she didn't really want... she kept turning stuff down, it sounds like, because she was waiting after her Oscar nomination. She's getting offers for projects, and she kept turning them down. I go through this as a freelancer too. You turn down a certain company 5 times, and they're like, "Well, you got to say once, otherwise they're just gonna not bother calling you anymore."
Sure.
So I think she got to the stage where it was like, "Well, I got to say yes to something."
And she needed a studio movie.
Yeah.
In order to advance in her career.
Yes.
And unfortunately it didn't do well, which is a shame, because this film is really well shot.
Yeah,
it's really well directed.
Yeah.
It looks really good.
Yeah.
It's great. It's so much better than Dick Tracy. I think the colour thing works better. I like Dick Tracy. I like what it tried to do. Yeah. I know you didn't. But it's the way it's lit. Yeah. Whenever a scene is lit, it's always lit with blue, yellow, or red.
Yeah.
It's never shot... There's no daytime scenes. The whole thing was shot in Montreal.
Yeah.
over 40 nights. So there's the Canada connection there.
Yes.
Kumar. And I think there are times when it's lit with like white light, but not often. It's almost always. I think there are scenes that are set on on a front porch or set in a house. But anytime they're in a warehouse or they're in the Punisher's lair, or in a darkish room, it's always...
Even certain street scenes had the kind of Dick Tracy red walls or blue walls just because of the way it was lit.
And it really does look cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a great scene. So, to the start of the film, it's straight out of Punisher Max. It's this old mobsters...
Oh, right before that, I just want to mention that it has a Marvel Knights logo, which you pointed out to me.
Yes.
There's only like 3 movies with them. 2.
This is
and
the...
Ghost Rider?
The Ghost Rider sequel.
Okay. Has a Marvel Knights. Also, rated MA15+ in Australia.
Yeah, but R in America.
That was shocking to me when I turned this on.
I thought to myself, am I watching a cut down version on... Because I watched it on Netflix. I didn't watch the version that you sent me that you got on the high seas. So I couldn't find anything online about it possibly being edited for the Australian market. And I can't imagine they would buy it.
I actually think... Because it depends. When did Walking Dead start on TV? Because I was rated TV-14 in the U.S. and I was like, what? So I think in the 15 years since this movie's come out, the tolerance for teenagers doing violence has gone it's gone to a level where 15-year-olds are allowed to watch this. This movie's crazy. Like the violence is crazy.
So over the top. So over the top.
Yeah. Apparently, there's 81 kills. By Frank Castle,
I wrote
supposedly.
that down as well. That's confirmed kills.
Confirmed kills.
That's where you know that he killed.
Yeah.
That he killed the guy.
So so you said straight out of Marvel Max, as you're saying.
Yes, straight out of So the very first scene is the mobster's birthday, just like it is in the first issue of Punisher Max. There's some great visual storytelling early on that I really liked. There's the mobster Benny the Beaut.
Yep.
Who's going to become the villain Jigsaw.
Played by Dominic West, who just come off of a very acclaimed run on The Wire.
Yeah.
And apparently Patty Considine, who we couldn't remember who he was when we were watching Death of Stalin, was her first choice for Jigsaw.
Right.
And she couldn't get him for whatever reason. There was some backroom stuff happening with Lionsgate, and she didn't get him.
Yep.
But anyway, so Jigsaw was a Punisher villain. So Punisher doesn't normally have recurring villains because he usually kills them.
Yes. But Jigsaw's
this one guy, Jigsaw was the first guy who showed up in an early Spider-Man issue. And he was this guy that the Punisher he was a gangster that the Punisher had thrown through a plate glass window or something and messed up his face. So his face was all stitched together. But he shows up in the Spider-Man issue wearing this kind of super suit.
Yeah.
He's got these thugs that have like uniforms like Joker goons.
It's very Sinister Six, isn't it? I mean,
it's
nothing like.
But and the Punisher doesn't remember who he was. So at the end of it, he's like, I don't remember who this guy is. But also doesn't kill him at the end of the story for some bizarre reason because I guess it's a
Spider-Man story. Yeah.
Anyway, but he does show up in Punisher comics from time to time.
Okay, so a recurring villain in a field where there are very few.
Yes, that's right.
He shoots them.
Yeah.
But in this, he's not Jigsaw yet. He's called Benny the Beaut, although we don't know that yet. There's a great piece of visual storytelling. He checks his hair.
Yes. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah.
He checks his hair in the car the rear view mirrors.
Yes.
Great. We know he's vain.
Yes.
Perfect. Then his girlfriend tries to help him with his hair. He jumps up like a jack-in-the-box and grabs her by the throat. Says, I do it!
Yeah.
Don't touch the hair!
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so he's vain and a crazy person.
Yes.
So they go in, they pay their respects to the Don in his wheelchair. I crap in a bag!
Yeah.
How happy birthday can it be? And it's revealed that there's a big deal going down. Benny the Beaut is overseeing a big deal on the docks. It's going to be worth $10 million.
Some kind of something is coming in.
The Don figures it out. He says the only thing worth that much is going to be some kind of biological thing.
Yeah.
We don't deal with biologicals.
Yeah.
They're selling it to the ragheads up in Queens.
Yeah.
Okay. Which means, I guess it's a PC way of saying Islamic terrorism.
Yes.
A non-PC way of saying Islamic terrorism, sorry, excuse me. And then, he says, he calls him a crazy person. He says, "You're just as bad as your brother, Looney Bin Jim."
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, the Don rolls out his wheelchair and says, "Come and have lunch." And they go, "Well, I'm not going to eat. I'm not going to sit down and eat with that bag of shit. So I'm just going to have another drink." So they hang around in this back room having a drink.
Yeah.
All the bigwigs sit down for their tea.
Yeah.
And then the lights go out.
Yeah.
And it's like, "Oh, turn up the lights!" And then... Sorry, this scene is going to live in my dreams.
Yep.
Suddenly, a flare is lit.
Yeah.
It's a bright red flare.
Yeah.
It's being held by the Punisher. This is the first we've seen of him. Pretty much, right? I think we saw him in the credits.
We see him kill a guy when he comes into the mansion.
Okay.
Because the mansion's being watched by these two cops, one of whom is named Soap, who's a character from the comedy run.
Everyone in this is a character from the comics, except for Looney Bin Jim.
Yes, in name,
yes.
Including the Rasta parkour guy was from the Max run.
Absolutely everybody except Looney Bin Jim. He's the only original creation, or the only original name.
Yes.
Alright, so we've seen the Punisher we saw him in the opening credits. No comic book panels in the opening credits.
No.
Just sort of a montage, essentially footage from the film that we're going to see.
Yeah.
And him, like loading guns, putting on Kevlar, all that sort of stuff. Anyway, back to this fantastic scene. Right, okay, so we have seen him already, but this is the first... He's holding a bright red flare, so it's lit bright red like we say. He looks like a figure out of hell. He's just standing there. And he leans down, pulls out a knife, cuts the old man's throat, except he doesn't just cut his throat, he chops his head off. And this is just with a Bowie knife.
Yeah.
This isn't a sword.
Well, this is not... Yes, but that's nothing compared to the punch that Ink gets later on. The guy's partner, the crusty old Don's partner, a woman, tries to pull a gun on him, I think. Yeah. He snaps her neck. Yeah.
And it's crazy, over the top. And then he just starts butchering everybody at the table.
Well, then he jumps up. You forgot about the chandelier.
Oh, I haven't forgotten. I'm getting to it. And then he's butchered him. He's butchering the people at the table, and then he jumps up.
Yeah.
He hooks his legs around the chandelier that's hanging over the table, and then starts rotating with a gun in each hand, and gunning down everybody in the room. The people are running in the room; they're getting gunned down.
Yeah.
He keeps shooting. Meanwhile, Benny the Beaut is watching it, and his two compadres,
Billy.
Pitsy. Oh, it's Billy the Beaut.
Yeah, because it's Billy Russo, or Russotti, he's called in this one. He's usually called some version of Billy Russo.
Billy, not Benny. Billy is watching it with his with Pitsy and Ink, who are father and son in the film.
Oh, right. Okay, I didn't pick that up.
Yeah, they're watching it.
They're not they're Pitsy and Ink in name only.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But they're watching it from up there in terror, essentially. In terrified awe, as Ray Stevenson spins from a chandelier shooting people.
Yeah.
Everyone's dead.
Yeah. How did he even get the momentum to spin around? None of it really adds up.
It's absurd. In the podcast, which we've referred to frequently, Lexi Alexander says that she didn't want it to be realistic violence.
Yes.
She didn't want it to be cartoon violence. She said but she reckons she found a space in between, which she called absurd violence.
Okay. I guess I buy that.
Because it's just realistic enough so that you go, whoa, and cartoonish enough that you crack up. Because I was laughing constantly at the spectacle of people's heads flying off.
Yeah.
He caves in Inky's face with a punch.
So, there's everybody talks about the parkour rocket launcher scene.
Yep.
And I knew that scene was coming. I kept reading it. People were like, we don't want to spoil it. I'm like, I know it's coming. I've seen this movie before. I laughed so hard again when it happened. Because it's not just it's the music. The music suddenly stops. Cuts off. As soon
so what Kumar's referring to is Billy pays a parkour gang as his errand boys to run errands, to do cash drops, to rough people up. He's not super happy because they're goofy parkour dudes, and they're very silly. They're high on meth all the time, and they parkour everywhere they go.
Yes.
They never walk where they can parkour.
Yeah.
When they leave with their cash drops, they start going up the stairs. And Pitsy says, "Where are you going?" And he goes, "Oh man, is it alright if we leave?" He's Rasta as well. Yes. "Oh man, is it alright if we leave?"
Wait, isn't he have an Irish accent?
Irish Rasta.
He looks like Rasta, but he's like got an Irish accent.
You're right, it's a bizarre accent.
Because he's actually a character, his name's like McGillicuddy or something. He's from the Kitchen Irish run of Max.
Right. Okay, so I guess he's meant to be Irish, but it's a bizarre fusion accent.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
And he says, "Oh, is it alright if we leave via the roof?"
Yes.
Anyway, later on when Punisher's trying to find Jigsaw, someone lets him know that if you find the parkour maniacs, you find Jigsaw.
Right, okay.
And then they're doing their thing, laughing, jumping from... And then one guy starts to jump from one roof to another.
Yeah.
And then a rocket comes out of nowhere and vaporizes him mid-jump. And the music just stops.
Yeah.
I just laughed so hard.
Yeah.
There are so many moments like this all the way through.
Yes.
It's
and then he ends up
it's so funny.
Throwing that McGillicuddy or whatever his name was onto the fence.
Yep.
With the spikes.
Onto the wrought iron fence with the spikes.
Pitsy,
Just like
and then
Pitsy.
he jumps down on his head and
just
cracks
like
next
Pitsy.
to Now, my thing about the violence in this movie is that kill in Marvel Max was an extreme kill of a villain that was very hard to beat. It was like the climactic moment. Oh yeah, and then he gets up. He's still alive after that.
Ridiculous that he's still alive.
It is, but it's like it's
he's
one
walking
of those
along saying like fuck.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know. For me, it's just a Garth Ennis movie. A moment that I dug it.
But to talk about, I don't want to talk about the comics anymore. But he wastes a bullet on him. This guy's not doing anything. He's wandering around with a fence in his chest. Yes. Oh, whatever.
But I think that the kills in this movie are just like pow, 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 pow. It's just nonstop. I mean, he kills everybody in the comics, but when a kill like that happens in the comic, it's like important.
Yep.
It's and here it's like a blink and you miss it. And like when he kills Ink and he punches him in the face and caves his face in.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, so why don't you just punch everybody?
Let him punch everybody's face.
Why waste bullets? Just punch everybody in the face. Also, there's no blood on his hands or anything when he pulls away. It's just insanity. It's just a weird.
It's just madness.
It's just madness. That's the best way to describe it.
It's great. I think Patton Oswalt said this film begins with the finale.
Yes.
Which is a great way of putting it.
Yeah.
And in any other film, that would be the grand finale, where he storms the mansion and cuts off the Don's head. And then springs from chandelier. But this is the first scene.
Yeah.
And it only ratchets up from there.
So in this big factory fight, Punisher accidentally kills a cop.
Oh, right. So he follows them. He follows Billy and the guys from. They get away.
Yeah.
And here we have the two cops that are shadowing him. One of them busts him coming out of the mansion. Has him at gunpoint.
Yes.
And, Frank turns around resignedly. And the guy puts away his gun, chucks him his keys, and says, "You want to get to the docks? Yeah. That's where Billy's headed."
Yeah.
And then he sighs and punches himself in the mouth.
Yes. Yeah.
And then he goes out, sees the other responders, the first responders, and Soap, the milquetoast kind of partner.
This was very much part of the Ennis run, which other writers would never touch before Marvel Knights, before the comedy run, where the cops are always after the Punisher. He's always on the run, trying to not get caught, not get arrested. In the first Marvel Knights run, our Garth Ennis was like, cops love him.
Yeah.
They just let him. He's doing their job. They applaud him. So this guy lets him go.
Yeah, this is very much a theme of the book of the film that the cops like him.
Yes.
And they put like their lamest dude.
Yes, down in the base. He's like the X-Files. It's like he's down there like Mulder.
Yeah, he is. He's down there exactly like Mulder in the archives.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the archives are all just Frank Castle kills.
Yes.
The whole archives of this police station.
Yes.
Every single file is a Punisher kill.
Yeah.
As if. But it's funny. It's a funny gag.
Yeah.
Anyway, he follows them to this factory where there's a shootout. He tosses Billy the Beaut into a glass process recycling facility, which is grinding glass.
Yes.
And he turns it on, and it grinds up Billy the Beaut's face.
By the way, I want to say at this stage, with the looking in the mirror and fixing his hair, and then falling into the thing at the factory because the Punisher pushed him in or whatever, we've got Batman Joker from Batman 89. Yes, it's exactly the same thing so far.
Absolutely is. Madness. I just want to throw this in. To this point, the Punisher hasn't uttered a word. I don't think he said a word. I think maybe he says thanks to the cop, maybe, or I don't even know if he even bothers.
Interesting.
I don't think he said a word.
I think you're right.
But he is sniffing after the... This is another
Oh, because he broke his nose and then he sticks a pencil up there to straighten it.
That's exactly what he does. Yeah. He's sniffing as he leaves the mansion, and the film's making a point of him sniffing. And I'm like, I wonder why that is.
Yeah.
And then he's in his car driving down to the... He's in the cop's car driving down to the docks, and he's looking at his nose in the mirror and wincing and sniffing. And then, as Kumar's already said it, he straight up grabs a pencil and sticks it up his nose and straightens his broken nose with it, resets his broken nose with it, with a very visceral crack.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, I burst out laughing. I couldn't believe how over the top. Like, and it's not...
It reminded me of...
This is explicit. He doesn't cover his nose with his hand, and he just sort of moves his hand and you hear a crack and it's all fine. You can see the pencil going right up his nose, and there's this bone-jarring crunch.
Yeah.
And then his nose is fine.
It actually reminded me of the scene in Rambo 3 where he's shot and he fills the wound with gunpowder and then lights it when he's out in the desert alone at night.
Yeah. Except it just happens right in the start.
Yes.
So there, as you say, he accidentally kills someone coming out of the loo, and we know that there are some FBI agents outside in a van monitoring the factory because they know everybody knows about this biological shipment coming into New York. All the federal agencies know about it and want to stop it, and.
It's a real MacGuffin, because it never gets exposed or anything like that. Nobody's exposed to the bioweapon.
No, we just sort of see it and it's some blue liquid. Fine. Yeah, but you're right, it is something of a MacGuffin, because... We'll get to it. So, yes. The guy's coming out of the toilet, he gets shot. And then we see the FBI agents take off their headphones and goes, oh my god, he's down! He's down!
Yeah, they've lost audio contact with the guy.
Yeah. And
the Punisher looks at the body and realizes he
sees the wire, and then he looks unhappy.
Yeah.
Billy the Beaut gets ground up. He's got no face anymore. The Punisher goes back to his lair, and he doesn't look happy. Again, he hasn't said a word. He just fills up a jug with water and drinks it, and then throws the jug.
Yeah.
And it's obvious as why he's cross. It's because he's killed an FBI agent.
Yes.
And here we have a small point of difference, I think, from Punisher Max at least.
Yeah.
Punisher wouldn't care if he shot an FBI agent.
I think he would.
Okay.
I think he would. I don't know that he would show... He wouldn't be visibly upset.
It wouldn't. It
would be in the narration. Yeah. And I'm actually a little bit surprised because they have this... Right from the very beginning, they established, even when he shows up in Spider-Man comics, we get Punisher's War Journal, which is a narration by the Punisher of what he's writing or reporting.
It's War Journal,
and it's such a great little narrative device that you could have used in this movie. It would have given you an excuse for a voiceover.
I like it better when he barely talks. I just love that
yes.
He's got a page of dialogue. Oh no, probably a bit more, but very little dialogue.
Yes.
Very little.
Yeah.
And I just think it's fantastic. We just thrown right in the deep end. The film just assumes you know who the Punisher is. We don't.
Yes.
We don't get that famous Batman scene that we get over and over.
No, we get a little bit later on. We get some flashbacks to the dead family at some stage and some explanation about that. This other cop shows up.
But it's way later. It's almost most of the way through the film, I think, when he finally kind of talks about it.
Yes, but we do get a flashback earlier.
Yes. Well, he's just having kind of like a PTSD.
And he visits a grave because he goes to the grave.
It's at the grave.
He goes to the burial
of the agent
that he killed.
Yes.
And then while he's there, he just goes and visits his family's graves. Yeah. And then we get a bit of a flashback.
Yes. He kneels at the grave and he starts beating on it with his hand. And then we can see, as he hits, we see a flash. And it's a flash of him. That's all. I think it's almost just stills.
Yeah.
We see him... he's covered in blood, sitting on a picnic rug, and there are dead people there, and he's holding them.
Yeah.
That's all we get.
So this other cop the partner of this FBI guy comes in to take over the case.
Yes.
Played by Colin Salmon, who has also played General Zod on Krypton. And he was on several episodes of Arrow. He's also on an episode of Tales from the Crypt. And was also in Aliens vs. Predator, if you want to count that as a comic book movie.
We may do so at some point.
And then Wayne Knight shows up as Microchip.
That's Newman from Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yep.
He shows up and is like, you can't blame yourself for killing this guy. There's going to be collateral damage. This is a war. We should say, I mean, even in the Spider-Man comics, he's like, this is a war. It was kind of grim for a kid's comic. It's like, this is a war. I'm risking what's left of my life. He's very fatalistic, even in that. This, he's like, well, I'm going to retire after he's killed this guy.
It's odd. It's a little at odds with as you say, it's more consistent perhaps with earlier depictions of the character, less so with the Ennis run, which would have been going at the time. I don't think Punisher Max would be this broken up.
No, you're right. I don't think he would talk about retiring.
He wouldn't be soul searching in his lair, and he wouldn't be telling his handler. Well, not handler. He wouldn't be telling his sidekick, that he's leaving, and his sidekick trying to convince him to keep going.
I think my headcanon or the excuse I give this is that he's only 6 years into being Punisher. He's not 28 years into it.
Okay, sure.
I think after 28 years, I think his brain is so broken. I think in Ennis, his brain is broken after Vietnam. I think even coming back, he's trying to live a life with a family, but it's like that secretly, it's like this isn't working. He's supposed to be at war. He's a kind of combat junkie.
I agree, but I agree, and sure, it's fine. But I just feel like this is a less. The only reason I bring this up is I feel this is a less interesting Punisher.
Yes,
in the film.
But I also think,
and I'm a little. It's serving to humanize him. To make him virtuous.
You're right. I think the humanizing thing is really... I think if you look at the John Barenthal version that's on Daredevil and on Netflix, that version, this is a guy that can go undercover, pretend to be a normal guy, sit down in a woman's kitchen and have a glass of wine with her. This is an actual scene in that show.
Okay.
And I'm like, Garth Ennis' Punisher doesn't have the social... He couldn't function. He just... Can you imagine him trying to pretend to be normal?
Yeah.
He can't do it. Not only can't do it, he doesn't want to do it. Even if he wanted to do it, he couldn't do it.
Right.
There's a scene where that little girl in Russia with the virus in her, he's like, there's another guy that he's doing this operation with, and the guy keeps swearing. He says, stop swearing in front of the girl. Because he has this messed up memories from when he had kids 30 years ago.
Right.
A vague thing. But he's killing people in front of her.
Exactly.
He's like, cover your eyes. And then he gives her something to read. He gives her the book of Go Codes, the nuclear Go Codes. He's like,
read that.
Read this.
Hilarious.
Like, he just has no idea.
Hilarious.
But I think the thing is, like, especially with the John Barenthal one, and with this one, and probably, I'm going to guess, with Thomas Jane, is that actors are like, I want to play a two-dimensional character. Punisher has shades, Ennis's Punisher, Marvel Max Punisher, has shades of rage. It's one dimension, it's got a range, that one dimension has a range, but it's only anger. There's a point where later on he maybe feels something for O'Brien a little bit, but... Right. I mean, it's so secondary to the life he's living, which is the life he wants to live, which is to kill these people.
Right.
So
I feel
I think actors are part of the issues that actors in Hollywood movies are like. You got to have more dimensions to this character, more sides to him.
I don't want to play a sociopathic.
A mass murderer, which is what Punisher calls himself. He calls himself a mass murderer.
So these scenes serve to make the Punisher relatable. They serve
understandable, let's say.
Yeah,
which
well,
I think
they make him heroic. Actually,
yeah, right.
I think it's a weakness of the film.
Yeah,
I don't think he should be heroic.
No, but I don't think we're ever going to see a live action version of the Punisher, which is like the Garth Ennis, that single-minded
maybe. But
beast.
Yeah, sure, but also I think
that we cannot understand. We cannot understand that character the way Ennis has written.
That's true. No one would want to watch that movie. It would be, as you say, unwatchable.
No, and
he does things like he goes and visits the family of the guy. Yes. He's decided to quit being the Punisher. He's got a lot of cash because he robs the mobsters.
Yeah.
And he takes his cash around to the wife of the dead agent.
Yeah.
And he gives her the cash. He says, here's the cash. I'm sorry I killed your husband. She's like, what are you doing? This doesn't make it right. You can't do this. She pulls a gun on him. He's so, fatalistic that he just says, oh, that's not how you hold it.
Yeah.
And he sort of points it at his stomach and says, if you're going to kill me, you want to aim here. And you want to hold it, you want to squeeze.
Yeah. Don't pull, squeeze.
Don't pull. And, she doesn't kill him, though, because the little girl has fallen, is relating to him. She's the little girl's already likes him.
Yeah.
A child knows when a person is good or evil. And she knows that the Punisher is good.
Yeah.
Even though he's a mass-murdering psychopath.
Yeah.
She asks him as well, she says, who punishes you, she says to him.
Yeah.
Because you're punishing these guys, but you killed my husband. Who punishes you? Who does punish him? I'm not sure. Is it going to be Looney Bin Jim? Because he appears in the next scene.
Yes.
So we mentioned... Billy the Beaut has now become Jigsaw. His face was messed up. We know he's vain. He's got the best plastic surgeon in town to repair his face, but his face is unrepairable.
Yeah.
It's got horse skin.
Yes, his bone structure's all messed up and everything as well.
He said that you had no muscles. He said you had no facial muscles left. You had no skin left. So I've had to rebuild you from scratch. You're going to have to understand that. And he's like playing it off. He's like, oh, how bad can it be? You're the best plastic surgeon in town. Just unwrap me already so I can look at it. He's like, yeah, but I just want to tell you, there's only so much. He's like, yeah, whatever, unwrap me. He unwraps him, and he looks like Frankenstein.
Yeah.
He basically looks like a horror movie monster.
Yeah.
And in a scene a little bit like Batman 89, he has a hand mirror.
Mirror.
Yeah. He grabs the mirror, doesn't laugh, he just looks at himself. He says to his henchman, can I talk to the surgeon alone for a bit? Oh, and Ink vomits.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
When Ink sees his face, he actually vomits. And they walk out, and Pitsy, his dad, hits him and goes, what, you couldn't hold it in for 5 seconds? You know how vain he is?
Yeah.
He looks like a freaking horror.
Yeah.
He looks like Pinhead or something from Hellraiser.
Yeah.
Anyway, they go back in, and they say, how are you feeling, boss? He goes, I'm feeling much better now. He's stabbed the surgeon in the head with scissors.
Yeah.
Anyway, then they say, well, we're going to have to kill the Punisher. And he goes, how are we going to kill the Punisher, Billy? He goes, don't call me Billy. Billy's dead. Call me Jigsaw.
Yes. I actually liked that.
Yeah.
Because...
and there's a cool scene where...
We've had this period of 20 or 30 years where in these superhero movies... the media names the heroes, or somebody calls him, he looks like a jigsaw or something, or the
people are calling him the Jigsaw Killer.
Yes, they don't.
It'd
whereas
like
in Batman 89, he's like, I'm Batman. Joker's like, call me Joker, and he's like, call me Jigsaw.
There's a great bit right after he's I think it's after he stabs the surgeon in the head with the scissors. He's looking out the window. And there's a billboard on the opposite side of the street. It's it's a television or something that's one of those animated billboards, and it's a New York scene of the Statue of Liberty, and it's a graphic where it's being assembled as a jigsaw, and you can see him looking at it.
Yes, yeah,
it's
on the TV. Yeah,
great,
yeah,
perfect.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah.
He doesn't gawk at it and go, huh?
Yes.
Maybe I'll call myself Jigsaw!
Yeah.
His performance in this is so funny.
His accent is crazy.
Yeah.
And he's an actor, Dominic West is an actor that has great control over his voice. Right. Because in The Wire, he was American. But there's a scene where he had to play a British John, like that was hiring prostitutes. And he had to put on this really bad fake British accent. And I'm like, how did he do that? Because he did a really good job of sounding terrible with it. So apparently,
go on. Yeah.
Apparently, like Lexi Alexander was the one that kept pushing him to like just go all out, do it.
Right. Yes.
And he went. His
he kept saying, "Are you sure? Are you sure?"
His accent is so full on in this movie.
It's so funny. I love it. Yeah. Anytime he's talking, I was just laughing.
Yeah.
I just really, and it just worth saying again. The action in this film is it's well shot. It's really well shot and well directed. Yeah. It looks fantastic. But it's peppered... No, not but. And it's peppered with these fantastically absurd
Yes.
overkill moments.
Yeah.
With people's heads flying off.
Overkill's a great word. Yeah.
With getting detonated in midair by a rocket-propelled grenade. Heads punched off shoulders.
Yeah.
Incredible. People's faces getting caved in with punches. It's so funny. Every time it happened, I was just pissing myself.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Perfect. Because it'd be so easy for it to be... It is silly, but it'd be so easy for it to not work, and you'd roll your eyes.
Yes.
But I very, very seldom roll my eyes.
No, it doesn't. Somehow it doesn't give you time to roll your eyes.
No, it's always moving. It's always moving on to the next thing.
Yes. The very thing I complained about earlier is actually the thing that's working in his favor.
Bang, 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 bang. It's always moving on to the next. It's brilliant.
Yes.
It's brilliantly nuts. Anyway, Billy. How are we going to get rid of Punisher? Don't call me Billy. Billy is dead. I'm Jigsaw. Okay? Jigsaw. How are we going to get rid of the Punisher? Oh, we're not going to get rid of the Punisher. He's like a one-man army. Everyone that goes up against him dies. He's killed all of our capos. What are we going to do? And he goes, well, don't worry. We're not going to take care of him. Looney Bin Jim is.
So they break his brother out of a insane asylum, a sanitarium, and he eats the guard on the way out. He kills the guy.
He eats an orderly. The guy that was feeding him.
Yes.
The guy's feeding him, trying to feed, like a tortuous, like evil orderly, except he's not even that evil.
Yeah.
He's just trying to get him to eat his applesauce.
Yeah.
He's just staring with a 1,000-yard stare. He's heavily medicated or whatever. He goes, here, have your applesauce, Jim. It's good. He's eating it. Nom, nom, nom. And then, Jigsaw comes in. The, guy backs off. And then they let him out, and Looney Bin Jim looks at Jigsaw and says, Billy, is that you? You look fantastic. They let him out. He was catatonic before, but now he's fine.
He's fine.
And
Pitts even asked, should we take his meds? And
no, not yet. Not yet. First they go, let's whack this guy about the orderly. And Looney Bin Jim says, no, I'll take care of him.
Yeah.
And he goes, hey, I'm gonna get my applesauce back. In Sweden, kidney and applesauce is a delicacy. And then he says, yummy, yummy, yummy. In my tummy, tummy, tummy.
Yeah.
And then he eats him.
Yeah. He kills him and eats... Yeah.
He just eats him. He straight up eats him.
Yeah.
And then that's when Ink says, should we take these pills? He might need them later.
Yeah.
And Jigsaw looks over at Looney Bin Jim, who's in the process of eating this guy's kidneys. He says, nope, he seems fine to me.
Yeah. He sneaks the pills in his pocket anyway.
Does he? I missed that.
Yeah.
I was too busy laughing at that scene, I suppose.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So, I don't know. Yeah, we've described all the scenes basically in the wrong order, but they're basically just non-stop shootouts and kills. Then Jigsaw decides his strategy is going to be to recruit all the other gangs to gang up and beat the Punisher.
Well, the first thing he does is he pulls off the deal successfully. The one for the biologicals.
Oh, before that, Looney Bin Jim, his brother, helps his... Jigsaw hates mirrors now. So Looney Bin Jim decides he's going to smash every mirror.
Hey, I promise you two things. First of all, I'm going to kill the Punisher slowly and painfully. And second of all, you're never going to have to look in a mirror again when I'm around.
Yeah.
And then he throws himself into every mirror.
Yes. They're in the hotel lobby.
Which is full of mirrors.
Yes.
So he smashes up about a dozen mirrors.
Yeah.
And not just, he punches them, he headbutts them, he launches himself into them, and then in the next scene, he's all bandaged.
Yeah. The rest of the movie, he's got these cuts all over his face.
Because he's all cut up from... It's just lunacy.
By the way, I want to mention there's a little Easter egg here, which is the hotel is called the Bradstreet Hotel.
Okay.
Tim Bradstreet was the name of the cover artist on Ennis's Punisher comics.
Brilliant.
He does these painted covers which are horrifying because they just look like a dude that you would not want to meet in an alley. He's not super huge or anything. He looks like a guy wearing a t-shirt with a skull on it.
Yep.
That absolutely looks like a serial killer. And a lot of the covers, he's in a basement surrounded by guns, and you're just like... I don't want to see this guy anywhere. So it's called the Bradstreet Hotel, which is a little tip of the hat to Tim Bradstreet.
It's like everything in this movie is a reference to the comics.
Yeah, somewhere. Yeah.
Like we said, only Looney Bin Jim.
Wayne Knight is really well cast, actually, as Microchip. I'd forgotten all about him being in this movie.
He's good.
Yeah.
He's great. So, first of all, Jigsaw needs money. He gave all his cash to the FBI agent to launder.
Yes, they're trying to get that. There's that whole plot line too, yeah.
And that's what makes them interact with the family of the dead, deceased agent, who Punisher is also interacting with because of his guilt. It's kind of like a inspiration for him to keep running into Jigsaw. So they invade the home of the woman and hold her hostage, trying to find the money. They want the money, so they're trying to find the money. Meanwhile, the Punisher's been arrested by the FBI agent and Soap.
Yeah.
The FBI agent, Frank, the Punisher says, we got to drive to the house. We have to drive to the house because Jigsaw was going there next. And they're like, no, the first place we're going to is the station. And Soap's like, no, maybe we should go to the house. Like, fine. They go to the house. The FBI agent goes in, tells Soap to stay in the car and watch Frank because Soap is hopeless. He's a total nebbish. And, and then Punisher says, you got to let me out.
Yeah.
And Soap says, I can't let you out. Yeah, you got to let me out. He's like, look, Frank, slipping you information every now and again is fine, but letting you out of your cuffs, that's a whole other ballgame. So Soap himself...
Yes, this is the first time we've learned
who's been
Soap...
talking constantly about catching the Punisher, like it's his mission in life, his dweeby mission in life, and he's a joke to all the other cops. He himself is on the Punisher's side, so every single law enforcement person in this is on the Punisher's side, including the guy who has the most reason to hate him, the FBI agent, whose partner was killed.
Yeah.
He hates him at first, but he comes around, of course.
Yeah.
Anyway, so...
the wife comes around
Of course, she comes around almost straight away.
Yeah, she forgives him.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
I'm not sure how I feel about this. We'll talk about it a bit more later. But Frank saves them, of course, saves the FBI agent, who's been tricked and held at gunpoint.
Kills Pitsy and Ink in that scene.
First of all, he punches Ink's face in what we've mentioned over and over. He just caves in his face with a single punch. A single punch.
Yeah.
And then the FBI agent gets the drop on Pitsy, cuffs him. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say or do may be held against you. Bang!
Yeah.
Frank Castle straight up shoots him in the face.
Yeah.
And then, the FBI agent yells, God damn it, Castle! And I don't like every line this guy delivers in the film, but this one is pitch perfect because he just sounds so exasperated.
Yeah.
Because he knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
And he did it anyway. Just so blows his face off.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Jigsaw's arrested, but he gets out because he does a bargain with the FBI. The FBI send the New York cops out, and Jigsaw says, I know where this...
the bioweapon.
I know where this bioweapon's coming in. You're going to want that bioweapon, or Wolf Blitz is going to be asking you some hard questions. And the cops, the FBI just agree to it. They give him everything.
There has been a conflict between Homeland Security and chasing down the Punisher at the local level even.
Yeah. And they just straight up, they give him... So the exchange happens with the Russian mob, and then as soon as it's finished, we never see the MacGuffin again, the bioweapon again. The Russians are instantly arrested.
Yeah.
The garage opens behind them, and there's all these cops out there in helicopters, which they must have heard.
Yeah.
Helicopters are really loud.
Yeah.
But, whatever. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. There they are, and they're, arrested. Then he's like, oh, my father's gonna get you, Jigsaw! Jigsaw's like, bye! And now he's got $12 million, and the only thing left on his ledger is to take out the Punisher.
Right.
So
he decides to recruit all the other gangs, and they're all divided by ethnicity. There's the Asian gang, there's the black gangs, there's Irish, yes, and there's a real Robert De Niro Taxi Driver guy in there with the Irish gang. I noticed in the background he was just sticking out. He had the mohawk and the sunglasses. So he goes in. There's a parody of the Patton recruitment scene where he's standing in front of an American flag trying to recruit all these people separately to...
big animated American flag behind him. And he's giving a very it's very satirical, like an impassioned kind of recruitment speech to them. You know, very jingoistic, very loaded language. And listening to the podcast with Patton Oswalt and Lexi Alexander, she lifted it completely from
Fahrenheit 9/11.
Fahrenheit 9/11, the recruitment speech that the Marine recruiters give to the high school students.
Yeah.
Apparently word for word.
Yeah.
Which just love that.
Yeah.
Just love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. So then we have the big showdown.
Yes. So basically they go into I think it's the hotel.
Yep.
And they're all on different floors. And but then another gang is recruited. The Russians are recruited by the...
Oh, yeah. Well...
the police or someone managed to get them to go in, and they're getting... Well,
for the Punisher's crew, so it's Soap, the FBI agent, McGinsky, or whatever his name is, and the Punisher. So they recruit the Russian gang.
Yes.
Because Jigsaw had his son put away. And he's like an old school
that's right.
Russian mobster playing cards in the Russian social club.
Yes.
It's very dingy. And anyway, all these old blokes show up with suitcases full of guns, and they get in a huge firefight with the guys on the first floor, the Asian gang on the first floor, sort of clearing the way.
Yeah.
And the Punisher jumps through a boarded up window on the second floor.
Yes.
And starts killing indiscriminately.
Yes.
In this, it's really well shot. Great action, all lit with the primary colours: the yellows, the blues, the reds. He's just shooting people. At one point, there's another great moment, like the "God damn it, Castle!" He puts a grenade in a paint can.
Yes. Yeah.
And kicks it
Yeah.
into a room with a guy in it. There's a guy in there waiting to shoot the Punisher.
Yeah.
He kicks the paint can in. The guy looks down at the paint can and then just sort of sighs.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, huh.
He just goes, oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I actually rewound it to watch it again. See him sigh again when he saw the grenade in the paint can. And it blows up, kills him. Punisher and Looney Bin Jim have a fight where Looney Bin Jim knows kung fu.
So the family has been captured.
I forgot, yeah.
They've been taken hostage. This is part of the whole reason the Punisher's attacking them in this building, because they've delivered an ultimatum. They did not microchip.
Microchip and the widow and the daughter.
Yes. And they've delivered this ultimatum to the Punisher to show up. There's a big shootout. They threaten to kill one or the other. Punisher has to choose, whatever. And how did he kill Jigsaw in the end?
He sets him on fire.
That's right, yes.
He says, "Time to put you out of my misery."
Yes.
And then pushes him onto the fire that's in the middle of the floor.
Yes.
It's a fire pit.
Yeah.
And, first he impales him, I think, with something. I forget what it was precisely. And then when he's impaled, he pushes him onto the fire pit.
Okay, right.
And then he burns up horrifically. You know, his eyes are melting out of his head.
Yeah.
It's all very satisfying.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the end of the film. Isn't it?
Then he's like gonna leave, and they're like,
oh, right, the final scene.
The Colin Salmon character, who his partner was the one that got killed, is like, it's okay, I've changed my mind about you. And the wife is like, we used to talk about you, and he believed you were one of the good guys.
Oh, unbelievable.
And
one of the mass murdering
then
good guys.
he leaves with Soap. Soap says, "I'll buy you a drink." And they're walking away together, and then Soap's just talking to himself, basically, and realizes the Punisher's gone away. And then he's about to be mugged. This guy shows up to mug him, and then the Punisher shows up, and there's a church behind him with the Jesus saves.
The Jesus
cross,
blinks out.
The Jesus blinks out.
And he's just left saves.
Saves.
Bit on the nose, I reckon. So, the cops, he's being held up at gunpoint.
Yeah.
And he just goes, "Frank?"
Yes, he's calling out, yes.
"Frank, please come and shoot my mugger to death."
Yeah.
For the crime of trying to mug me.
Yeah.
And then, of course, he marches. Ray Stevenson looks fantastic in this. He's huge, and he's in this... How did Patton Oswalt describe it in the blog? He's like in a Kevlar tin can. A Kevlar canister, that's it. And as you say, there's a big cross in the background, says Jesus saves. The Jesus blinks out, obviously, and then it leaves saves, and then bang, the mug is shot dead.
Yes.
So there you go. Muggers the cops secretly want all muggers to get shot dead. Well, not even secretly. He literally yells it.
Yeah, so here's the quote from Patton Oswalt. This film does not contain a hero. It does contain an anti-hero. It contains a glowering Brit who huffs around in a bulletproof body canister like he's searching for the perfect toilet to unleash a 10-burrito dump.
To continue, he's just as awful as the villains he dispatches. And, unlike scores of other action heroes, does not utter a single clever or ironic quip. I don't agree with a lot of what Patton Oswalt says right here. Mm-hmm. When he says the film does not contain a hero and does not contain an anti-hero, I'm not sure I agree with either of those sentences.
Right.
I think it certainly contains an anti-hero.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of time when the Punisher isn't murdering people in hilarious ways or glowering.
Yeah.
This movie's spending a lot of time valorizing him.
Yes.
Or humanizing him.
Yes.
He's interacting with the little girl. Showing her how to paint, showing her his toys from his deceased daughter that he keeps in the trunk.
There was a storyline later on, spoiler in the comics, where it turns out that O'Brien got pregnant, the CIA agent, by the Punisher. So he ends up with a daughter. And he takes the daughter to O'Brien's sister, and he's like... It's such a shocking moment, because you're like, oh, he's going to have a family again, he's going to stop being the Punisher. It's like, no. That's not the world he lives in. It's not even a consideration. It's like, she can't live in this world that I'm in, and I'm not leaving this world ever. So yeah, those kinds of moments, those humanizing moments, are definitely
they're present.
They're present,
and I think they're a bit problematic. So he says he's just as awful as the villains he dispatches. That's not the case. He's a heroic. He's not a straight hero. He's heroic. He has heroic moments. The film wants us to like him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the statement that he doesn't utter a single clever or ironic quip is not true. He does, like he says, let me put you out of my misery. He has one or two other lines that are similar to that.
Yeah, no, I think that...
If I ever see you in hell, I'm kicking you out of it.
I think you've really pinpointed something, because in the comics, the thing that I've been struggling to articulate about it since the 20 years since it came out is... You don't want to be the Punisher. You don't want to live in that world at all. You don't want to be that. That's a horrible life that he's living, and only he can live it. He's living it so we don't have to. It's not to be... We're not supposed to identify with it at all. We're supposed to be glad we're not that.
Right.
In the Ennis run on the Punisher.
Yes. And I'm getting less of that from the film. One of the things I didn't like about it was that.
Yeah.
The other thing might bear mentioning just quickly is that I thought the score was pretty bland.
It was really bland.
And really disappointing, because a lot of this crazy stuff deserves some crazy music to go with it.
And I think she said
she said she had a preferred score, and it was chucked out by Lionsgate.
The studio wanted Dark Knight Returns, or what was it, or the one with Batman Begins, or whatever, Dark Knight Rises, whatever it was. Yeah,
they wanted the Dark Knight with Heath Ledger.
Yeah, that's right. Dark Knight.
Massive hit, right?
Yes. So
they wanted that. This is what we want. So let's have lots of bland orchestral music for this film, for which it absolutely does not suit. Whatever. Yeah, really disappointing. I think for the final showdown, there's a bit of like thrash guitar, and that's.
There's some tunes in there. There's one Slipknot song. I think Psychosocial's in there. There's a Slayer.
Right.
There might be a Rob Zombie over the end credits.
Right.
So there's a few.
A bit more of that and less of the bland orchestral stuff would have been great.
Yeah.
But to return to this issue of valorizing the Punisher, I guess it's on the nose, and especially the way that the cops all love him.
Yes.
Right. This isn't great, because it's a little bit of truth in television.
Right.
Some policemen really like the Punisher.
Yes. This has become in the last 5 years
especially in the last few, it's they put the skull on their cars or on their uniforms even.
Gerry Conway, the original creator of the Punisher, has come out about this and talked about how he's trying to find some way to undo it. Absolutely. Marvel has taken that skull off the Punisher. The current version of the Punisher has superpowers, by the way, and is a leader of a group of ninjas, but they've changed the skull completely because they're trying to disassociate
from this view, because it's completely inappropriate. the Punisher is a mass murderer.
Yes, and
an extrajudicial killer.
As the meetings for this movie production were about to start,
yes.
Lexi Alexander was about to go in for a meeting, and then the Virginia Tech massacre shooting happened, and that killer had a Punisher poster.
He did
on his wall.
He did,
and it was in all the news.
She cancelled that meeting for obvious reasons. She said, "I can't go in and pitch this movie or respond to a pitch about this movie when it's just been revealed that a guy that shot 32 people had a Punisher poster on his wall."
Yeah.
Do you remember the American Sniper movie?
I've never seen it, but I'm familiar with it.
Based on a memoir, and in the memoir, Chris Kyle, the sniper, mentioned that they would paint Punisher logos on their stuff as well, and that they even called themselves the Punisher. Right. This is a quote from the book. For those of you who are not familiar with the character, the Punisher debuted in a Marvel comic book series in the 1970s. He's a real badass who rights wrongs, delivering vigilante justice. A movie by the same name had just come out. Must be the 2004 one. Mm-hmm. The Punisher wore a shirt with a stylized white skull. We all thought what the Punisher did was cool. He righted wrongs. He killed bad guys. He made wrongdoers fear him. That's what we were all about. So we adapted his symbol, a skull, and made it our own. We spray painted it on our Hummers and body armor, and our helmets, and all our guns. We spray painted it on every building or wall we could. We wanted people to know we're here and we want to fuck with you. Yep.
Yeah. So that is the reality we're dealing. I mean, the Punisher has entered the real world in that respect. It is something that we are.
So I suppose it's something to do with hindsight, because it's probably got worse. But this would have been what we're referring to here would have been around 2004.
Yeah, there's no way you can read up and down as black and white and want to paint the Punisher skull on anything you own. I think.
But you could absolutely watch this film and want to paint.
Yes.
And that's, I think, one of the problems with it.
Yeah. One last thing I wanted to note was that Ray Stevenson did reprise the character in an episode of Superhero Squad, which was a little Marvel kids. It was like for aimed at 5-6-year-olds. Like it's like a Marvel, like cute little versions of the Marvel heroes.
A bit like Teen Titans Go, isn't it?
Yeah, even more kiddie though, because it's not as jokey. It's like really cute superhero stuff. But the Punisher was in an episode.
The only time he reprised the role, where he delivers an amazing speech about how criminals are like Brussels sprouts, and you have to keep them away from your macaroni and cheese, or they will pollute it with the vile Brussels sprout juice.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, comics, yay or nay, Kumar?
Oh, so a big yay for me. These are
like your favorite comics, right?
These are some of my all-time favorite comics, and for me, it was like a real revelation to go from. I had been reading the stuff and like not enjoying it. You know what I mean? I was reading it addictively, and then something amazing happened with it, and a really thoughtful version of it happened that was really as upsetting as it was supposed to be, and finally meeting its potential. And it's kind of like it's like the Tom Baker Doctor Who. It's like you had to wait 10 years and you're like, oh, this is what it was supposed to be the whole time. Something like that. So big yay for me. Yeah.
I'm also a yay.
Okay. I'm surprised.
I've been praising Garth Ennis to the skies this whole time.
But I am surprised that you came in this week.
I really like Punisher Kills the Marvel Universe.
Okay.
I think it's quite clever.
Yeah.
I can see where it all started, really, with that. Before it became a bit of a one-note kind of thing that you saw over and over. I liked it.
Yeah.
I also like Punisher Max for all the reasons I already described. Yeah. What a fascinating protagonist.
Yeah.
Or / antagonist.
Yeah.
With his bizarre version of what is right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yay.
Okay. Movie, I'm going to say yay.
I'm surprised you're hesitant.
Well, I hesitated because...
It does have its issues. I think even Patton Oswalt in his blog said, I've seen better films, much better films.
Yes, I mean, it's...
But I didn't feel like standing on my chair and cheering at those ones.
I really am not sure I understand what Lexi Alexander's approach to it in terms of, did she like the movie that when she was making it, or did she always think it was dumb, or...
It's hard to say, isn't it?
It's really hard to... But I think it's... I've seen it twice now, and I think it's wild, and it's surprising, and doesn't... The level of violence doesn't add up. Like, I don't understand why the punch works to smash a guy's face in one scene, but not other scenes. It all somehow... hangs together, and it's just all so elevated to that level of craziness that
it's a real balancing act. It sets an absolute blinding pace, a cracking pace as it moves from scene to scene. Drags a bit when he's talking to the widow and stuff like that, but you don't stop to wonder what's happening. It's just the pacing is really, really good.
Yeah, and I can't believe it's a studio film. To me, this was like Samurai Cop. Yeah. In terms of like
I think
weirdness.
She said in the podcast that she considered it, and some of the people who were making it with her considered it like an homage to 80s action.
Right.
To the crazy days of when if you had a low budget. You could at the very least put in some wild
you don't have the stars
stuff. Yeah,
you don't have the budget. You can put in some craziness. Yeah.
So it's a yay for me, a full-throated yay.
Yeah.
For me, it has problems. I think we've discussed them.
Yeah,
I just it's a real experience. You can't see many films like it.
Yeah.
Roger Ebert, it said in a review. You know, you used to be able to rely on a bad film being badly made.
Yes, that's right. I pulled a quote from Roger Ebert as well. I wrote it down as my favorite in his review because I used to read him all the time. The city, Montreal playing New York, has a small population consisting only of good guys and bad guys and not much of anybody else. I'd get out too. It's the kind of violence the president should fly over an Air Force One and regard sadly through the window.
Great. But yes, he liked the way it was filmed. He's very technically proficient.
Yes.
Very good looking.
Yeah, he did recognize that. Okay, adaptation.
I'm going to say yay because so much of it comes straight from the comics, at least visually.
Yes.
So not just the strange way it's shot with those primary color lights, which it looks rad. But it doesn't make sense. Why is there a red light there? Yes. Why is there a yellow light coming out of one doorway and a blue one coming out of another doorway? Doesn't make sense. Doesn't matter. Don't ask questions. Just enjoy the ride.
Right.
The crazy Technicolor ride. And, I like that, you've got things that happen. A lot of the craziness is crazy stuff that happened in the comics. He jumps out of a window and stomps on a guy's head after he's already been impaled on a gate. Because that's exactly what Punisher does in Punisher Max. Like Lexi Alexander said, the only thing she made up was the parkour guys.
Right.
The rest of it all came from the comics. And she said if she was promoting the film, she would have leaned into the fact that it was such a faithful adaptation of so many comic book moments. She said she would have printed out a sheet and put it on for all the reviewers and put it on all their chairs, showing them how each scene mapped to a similar scene in the comic book and said, "Look at this! Look! This is the film's gimmick. Go out and promote this film as a mad film that's bringing comic books to life on the screen, comic book action to life on the screen, and people would have gone for it. I reckon. I'm not sure if this film would ever have been a runaway success because it's pretty bananas. And there's not much story. It's all just sort of bananas action. But I think if more people would have gone and seen it if they'd known that there was this angle.
Yes.
This angle that it was a faithful adaptation of some of the goriest comic books ever printed.
Right. I'm going to say nay.
I love it.
But you almost convinced me.
Almost.
But you also convinced me by saying that he's too humanized. Because for me, we've had 4 screen versions of the Punisher.
Twice.
Yeah, you're right twice. We've had 4 screen versions of the Punisher, and none of them have had. Well, actually, I think looking back, the Dolph Lundgren one, which we maligned for years and years, was actually kind of maybe the closest to what Garth Ennis did 20 years later.
Wow.
Or 10 years later. So the Punisher, the character that I read the comics for, I feel I changed my mind. I'm gonna say yes. I think it matches the. You know what, whenever Garth Ennis, when he quit the book, and sometimes there are periods in between, they got other people to come in and write, and they did a really bad job trying to mimic They just wrote sadistic comics. Right. They were like, this is what Garth Ennis does. They didn't understand.
Garth Ennis is a sadist. Let's just write sadistic comics.
That's it.
Yeah.
I think this movie is like those comics. So I'm going to say yay in the sense that
damning with faint praise.
I don't like that I think it's an adaptation of the wrong Punisher comics in the wrong Punisher personality, not the wrong comics. They got his personality wrong, but that personality does match some versions of him that we've seen over the years. So I've flopped. Next week we will go back to Barbarella.
I can't wait for this.
I can't even... Was it an Italian production or something? French comic book, maybe an Italian movie. I haven't seen it since the 90s. Anyway, we'll...
See you next week?
Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Punisher. We really appreciate this.
We're nothing but white blood cells, hunting the infection called crime, a sickness that sneaks in through the cracks, the way that Brussels sprouts sneak onto a plate of delicious macaroni and cheese. Sure, the city looks safe. Just push the Brussels sprouts to one side, right? Rawr! No matter where you put them, their vile vegetable juices corrupt the whole plate. Oh. I'm out here to keep those stinking sprouts off the mac and cheese. Keep them from leaving the store in the first place.